All right, looks like we're live. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about the recent projector comparison we did with the JVC NZ500, the Valerion Max, and the Epson LS12000. We did this over at a Kansas City member's house named Sheldon, his CARP on the forum, CARP. And these are 4 of the attendees. We had 8 there, but only 4 of us were able to join tonight. We're just going to kind of talk through our impressions and stuff. There's a big thread over on AVSForum to get like some details that people wrote up, their experiences and observations. This is just going to be a way for us to kind of visit and chat and share live impressions, answer your questions. If you got any questions, I have the chat pulled up on the right. We have some footage recorded with just an action cam. It's not going to be fancy footage. It also is going to be a little bit off color because an action cam can't record the Valerion DLPs. I don't know the terminology. Ryan Kramer, you might know, but the spectrum or something's wrong as far as the action camera picking it up. So
This is the way the sensor captures, and it's not just the fact that it's a cheap action camera. You're going to have this trouble no matter how nice your camera is to some extent when you have 2 different displays or 2 different projected displays up, right? Like even the footage that I shot in S-Log 10-bit or whatever, you put them side by side, and one, if you looked at that as a way to tell the color, you'd be like, holy crap, the one on the left is so pink it hurts. The one on the right is so blue it hurts. So that's a little bit par for the course until you get into a little bit of tweaking for what you saw perceptually type territory.
Yeah, so we're just making that disclaimer up front. Like, don't pay that attention to the colors. The colors looked pretty nicely matched in person. They weren't perfectly matched. We didn't have these things calibrated. They were just kind of like user preference settings out of the box, forum recommendation settings out of the box, that kind of thing. So,
as an aside, I would say that technically the 12,000 did have calibration profiles that were used during the shootout.
White gamma profiles, that's right.
Yes.
No, grayscale gamma, the 11-point grayscale. So yeah, we can go ahead and get started. We started about like 6:30 at night or so, and then we went till 2:30, 2:45 a.m.
Yep.
It was late.
We had a big list of content. Let me pull that up on the screen real quick to kind of talk through that real quick as far as what we listed. We watched each of the projectors solely first. So we watched the JVC NZ500. In fact, Sheldon gave us just a little demo because some of the people hadn't been to his room before, probably an hour of that or so, using the NZ500. And then we went through the clips on the NZ500. And then we went through the clips on the Epson and the Valerion. And so we watched each of them individually blown up to the full screen. He has a 158-inch CinemaScope screen, if I recall correctly. And it's a EN 4K material. Is that right? I have to look at the thread again. But nice big screen. We blew it up to full size. And then we did the next section was side by side. So we did the JVC and the Valerion side by side, and the Valerion and the LS12000 side by side. And the results were not necessarily what everyone expected, or at least not what I expected. I came away pretty impressed with that Valerion Max, and we'll talk about some of that as we go through it. So first, let me pull up the thread. I'll put it in chat so you guys can read there. Let me share my screen, and we'll just talk through it, and I'll put it in chat real quick. So share screen. Kansas City comparison. Okay. Is that showing on the screen, fellas?
Yep.
Okay. So,
and it is working on YouTube as well, by the way. I just so you know, there's no false starts this time.
Thank you. So these are the attendees. Carp was the host. 91 Hybrid is on the screen with us. His name is John. Tim, Stitch One on the forums. Kevin's on the podcast with us. His name is Salted Toes on the forum. Lonnie was a guy that actually came in from Lincoln, Nebraska. He is not able to join us tonight. Ryan's on the board with us here. His name is Chirpy on the forums. And then I'm RK, of course. And this was the size of the screen was a 158 CinemaScope. It was Elite A4K material. And when we did the side-by-side, the images were about a 110 16:9 or a 137 equivalent scope over zoom for the side-by-sides. And then we just you'll see when I pull up the video stuff, if we go into that, you'll see that it just kind of blew off the left and the right side of the screen. And we tried to match in the center and like just watch the inside of the screen on each side. I have some pictures of Carp's room and the room thread here. Let's go there. Is this still showing on the screen there whenever I flip the tabs? Does it show Carp's room?
Nope. It is only showing the initial start of the AVS thread. Yeah.
So this is Sheldon's room. I assume that came up now. Yes?
Yep.
Okay, very good.
Correct.
So he's got velvet for about the first third of his screen and nice black seats. Now he has actually black carpet and black velvet even down in the front of his room. I think some of these later pictures might show that so that you can see exactly how dark it is. And he's got darker walls with a lot of like acoustic treatments on the walls. So it's not purely black paint, but when you're in there and the lights are out or the laser goes to full cut to black, it's completely black in there. It's a good room for this kind of demonstration. So already had the LS12000 and the NZ500 hung. The Valerion was set up on a box and a table on both left and right side when we tested on both sides. And that was kind of just the easiest way to make this work. The first comparison that we did side by side was the NZ500, like we said, and the Valerion, and then we did the Valerion and the LS12000. So you kind of got a taste of the pictures there. Let me put a link to this thread in the chat. You guys can check that out. I'll also put it in the description of the video if that's more helpful. And then let's go ahead and get started. So Ryan Kramer, care to say just any general thoughts to kind of get this started?
Yeah, so maybe like context of where I was coming from and where I'm going to. So I came into this one. I only briefly had some experience with the Pro 2, not a whole lot of time with it. It didn't necessarily knock my socks off, partly because of the big elephant in the room that had always been the fact that I could see rainbows. And so what ends up happening in a situation like that is I kind of sort of check out right away after that. It's like, well, if there's that thing that sort of like literally makes my brain a little bit irritated, then the rest didn't really matter for me. It didn't matter if it was sharp. It didn't matter, if EBL was enhanced black level was helping with squeezing more contrast out of the DLP chip under certain scene conditions. All that sort of just went to the wayside, and I just sort of sat it on the shelf in my mind mentally, if that makes sense, right? It's like, all right, people can who can't see RBE on that particular projector, they can have at it. It's just not going to be for me. Then along came the opportunity to see this one. I'm trying to think. It's only been out like in the public's hand not that long now, maybe a month and a half, and it's been more of like a trickle out, as I understand, at launch for this thing. So being able to check this thing out in person, I was interested in it because the projectors that I have the most experience with up to this point are of course, the typical, we'll call them industry stalwarts, the JVC, the Epson. And I have a decent amount of experience with most of Epson's projectors at this point, especially the 12,000, but also the 3,000 and the 7,000, the QLs, and then of course the JVC series. So I came into this, and right away, the number one thing that I was curious about was what I was talking about before, the RBE, the rainbow effect on this thing. Supposedly, it's not just how fast the wheel spins, but also the way they do their sequential stacking post. And so they were claiming, hey, we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it this way faster, and in theory it's supposed to cut down on it. And I don't know if you have that moment on your action camera or not, but literally like 3 of us at least all at once had sort of a wait a minute. Like immediately, it was like somebody turned a switch off. Like, and I was like, and I had this literal reaction where I was like, like sort of like blinking, like, wait, what? Because I think I might even mention this in my AVSForum post. I've been in this hobby for so long. I want to say with, messing with projectors, probably 26, 27 years at this point. And DLPs were always never an option, the single chippers. And it was for this reason, just about almost all of them across the board, they were never an option because of the fact that they always had rainbow effects, no matter how fast the wheel is spinning. And then all of a sudden this one came along, and I was like, okay, finally, I'm going to actually sit down and pay attention to the rest of it, right? And so, well, then what are the other things that you would be looking for at that point? Well, yeah, it's like, of course, the sharpness is really good. That's sort of what DLP is known for. The fact that it's a single chip, it just makes it a lot easier for you to get a very tight, sharp image. How good is the color? They claimed, I believe they claim rec 2020 of about 110, but most tests are coming back in the 95-ish to 100 range, which, hey, no slouch there, right? And so all that stuff presented really well. And so that falls to the wayside really quickly. And then it just sort of, turned into, okay, let's see how distracting the tricks that it uses are to squeeze that additional contrast out. I feel like that right there, that last bit, it was where like 95% of all the rest of the effort and controversy on whether or not you're going to really enjoy this project or not will come from for most people. But that was my first initial take on it. I'll shut up for a little bit.
John, you want to share your thoughts?
So, prior to this, we'd done the Pro 2 review, and in that I was, say it again?
Just last month.
Yeah, last month. And in that, one of the things I took away was how more consistent the LS12000 was from a contrast perspective in dark scenes than the Pro 2 was. Not that the Pro 2 is unwatchable for me, but just a dark consistency was better on the LS12000 over the Pro 2 in my mind. So with the conversation that was around the Max and more with the use of a manual iris and specific cinema modes that was built into the system, would that bring a little more consistent black performance that I saw in the LS12000 that I didn't see in the Pro 2? And so when I got it home, I've only had it, I got it on December 20th and finally in my hands. I ordered it on November 3rd, I think, somewhere in there, November 6th. So the beginning of November, and to the trickle out that Ryan Kramer was talking about. And so I got it in the hands and, I got it set up in my theater and kind of the first thing I noticed was the black performance definitely was more consistent as far as going in and out of EBL. And so it wasn't until we finally got it in the room again, up against kind of what I at the time was leaving as the benchmark of the LS12000 and kind of seeing, how those compared. I was really quite surprised that I felt that the Max actually not only matched the LS12000 in that shortcoming that I had identified with the Pro 2, but in fact, in my opinion, did a better job on majority. And when I say majority, I'm talking 90+% in my mind of the black scenes or the dark scenes. So, so that was kind of what I wanted when I purchased the unit, and then I was pretty surprised at that performance level, just based off of adding an iris is really kind of the big thing. Now, of course, they've done software updates and stuff like that as well to improve EBL and color shifting and so on and so forth. But that was kind of my big takeaway from the night. And then, of course, how well the NZ500 looks. That's a great projector. Only real issue for me with that is motion, but we'll probably get into that later.
And Kevin, go ahead. If you have to mute for background noises, I did as well, so we'll understand.
Yeah. So I mean I haven't been to one of these shootouts before. I mean, I've been to M-Wave and I saw it there, and then this is the first one I've been to with the other guys. There was some time that I saw the Valerion Pro 2 at Ryan's house when somebody brought it. I think we were there for just looking at Ryan's screen, but somebody brought it, and so we took a look at it. My first impression of that device in particular was that it was burning my eyeballs. It was I mean, there were rainbows too, but it was just looking at it was painful. So when I saw the Valerion Max, I was very surprised that the rainbow effect went away. Like, it was there, I think, when we first started the night, because it might have been turned off, but it as soon as we got out of the menus and started watching stuff, it was gone, and I couldn't see any rainbows after that point. So some things that I noticed, I've seen the NZ500 before. I've been to Sheldon's house. I've watched actually a movie on it, so I'm familiar with it, and it looks really good to me for what it is. Like, I'm actually very surprised at how good that projector looks, especially in his room. It's all dark and everything. When you're talking about the Valerian Max, there were some things that stood out to me that I I mean, I was looking for the rainbows and I didn't see them, so that was good. Some things that I didn't want is like the colors were weird in certain spots. I feel like they didn't match with what I expected to see in those scenes. In some places, they seem like washed out, and in other places, they seem like they were brighter. Like you had more red in some spots, and then in other spots you had like no color. So I was a little surprised by that. The They're also, let's see, like the backlight dimming. I don't think I would like the backlight dimming personally, because it loses some detail in the highs where there's a lot of color that would normally be there, but with the backlight dimming on there, the EBL they called it, enhanced backlight dimming, I feel like it wasn't giving the same brights that you would get in the same colors from those brighter lights in the scene as you would see in there. But the darks were really good too. So then you got like darker spots. There were some other things I noticed too, like the when there was white dots or like text, you could see this kind of white like color bleed on them, where there's like a pink on the side of it and stuff like that. And then some other things I noticed was like the tone mapping was actually, I thought it was pretty good, but it was also kind of weird in some spots. But it did some interesting things that the other projectors did not do when shown bright scenes. And the place we saw it the most was that Vegas scene.
I have a little bit of footage on that Vegas scene we can talk through a little bit too. Yeah, you know, one thing I learned from this little shootout, and I've seen it in multiple shootouts, but I think this was one of the strongest of that, kind of confirming this idea, is that people see differently. I mean, you kind of take that lightly, but it's really legitimate. And so that red tint that we talked about, for instance, I didn't see that at all. Like the Valerian image to me looked the same color as the other units, or generally speaking, but like the camera picks up that red tint like real strongly.
It presents to me as a slight pink tint wash on all grayscale, and then goes from
I
yeah,
got
so
it on the
that's
Pro
Yeah.
2, but I didn't get it on this Max. And so that was one of the reasons I didn't like the Pro 2, is because the colors seemed very unstable to me. Like they were constantly kind of shifting and moving and just yuck. But I didn't get that on this. Now, because I didn't get this on this, and everyone in the room was seemingly pretty complimentary, saying they're not seeing rainbows that are obnoxious, at least to the point of like taking you out of the mode. Tim, one of the guys, and I was hoping he would be on here tonight, but he's not able to join us. Somehow he realized that he sees, and like the camera, and it's kind of a funny story because he was thinking that the Valerian was way too red. In fact, at one point he said, "Are you guys gaslighting me? Because I see what the camera sees." So he's holding up his phone and he's like, "This is what I see." And we're like, "No, we don't see that." I'm not going to say the word right. Maybe one of you guys can correct me, but metamerism or something like that is the term that they use on the forums. And it's because our eyes don't see like a camera sees with the specific wavelengths in most cases, but somehow Tim sees that way. So the whole night he was thinking like the colors were way off, but they weren't for 7 of us. They just were for him. Now, this goes further into like frame interpolation preferences. We had kind of a mixed group on whether they liked frame interpolation, on which projector they liked it best on. The Valerian Max, I should say, did very well, I thought, with the frame interpolation. It was probably my favorite of the night. Some of the guys hated it on the Epson LS12000, which I also like, and hated on the Valerian Max. And then some of us thought like 24 frames per second seems too juddery to really enjoy. So we would prefer to have frame interpolation. So there's not only in color space, but also in just like perception, or flicker fusion rate, as you look it up on Google, is kind of how you can read a little bit more on this. It varies person to person and significantly. So that accounts into the RBE noticing, like how often you see the rainbow effect. On this Max, I didn't really see the rainbow effect except for on one clip of the actual content, and that was the Hobbit credit scene. When the big letters came up out of a black background and it was full white lettering, I saw at the very initial part of it with the biggest letters, like the rainbow effect that you're familiar with. But as soon as it flipped to the smaller text where it's got like all the different people in it and just scrolling up, I no longer saw rainbows. So we watched, I don't know how many hours of footage. I didn't see rainbows anywhere except for that. Now on the Pro, it's like Rainbow City, and even just last month when we tried it, like it's just unwatchable to me. I can't do it. I don't enjoy it. I'm like Kevin in the sense that it actually feels like it's burning my eyes and makes me feel like I don't want to watch this anymore. Like that's me. That's my eyes. It's not a game. I'm not exaggerating. That's how I feel. Like it makes my eyes very tired. But I didn't get that at all out of the Max. So I could actually enjoy it and think like, this is a nice display. So my curiosity comes in like, hey, all right. So if other people don't see that same effect that I see on the Pro 2, maybe that's why the Pro 2 can get so much praise, because they see it as like how I'm seeing the Max, basically. Because the eyes work differently, because we perceive differently. Now I can kind of understand a little bit more in hindsight, like why maybe people think the Pro 2 is not as bad as I thought it was, because they see differently. Anyway, just further confirmation that we can't tell you whether you should get the, a DLP or whatnot, because we don't know how you're going to see or what you can perceive. You're just going to have to explore that yourself and see for yourself.
It's weird. It feels like that topic has been like suddenly coming up more and more in earnest, not just on the video side, but on the audio side as well, where like people are be giving a little bit more grace, actually, as far as like, oh man, how can you like these speakers, right? And the audio side of things, where it's like, it's the exact same problem. We're all working with something different biologically, and it doesn't really cross your mind because you just assume like, oh, well, this is the single source of truth. We clearly all see and hear the same, right? No, as it turns out, not at all. Or even some cases, some people, and this isn't even a case of people perceiving, two different types of white balances put next to each other looking completely different. This is even beyond that, where it's just, you just biologically, you get dealt with a different stack of cards. And then now what are you going to do? Go out there and play your hand the best you can. But this is what makes the in-person stuff so important. And it's harder than ever to do now with the complete death of the majority of brick and mortar places to go. We all assumed that, oh, well, we've got our ratings.com to go to. They know everything, right? It's like, well, guess what? There's still a lot we don't care if these other places go away. This is a superior resource. Well, as it turns out, that in-person stuff is still useful to pinpoint a few things, including what's up with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's even difficult with the places that are trying to make those kind of accommodations for people's vision. Like Smart Home Hookup usually does like an RBE score. Yeah. And in his opinion, and he doesn't see RBE, so he's just going off his equipment. I remember reading his thread that he said the Pro had pretty low RBE compared to some of the worst type DLP cases.
Yeah.
To my eyes, the Pro 2 had the second worst RBE I've ever seen. And so I don't know what accounts for that, or how to correctly grade that or scale that across the field if it's different for different people, and if equipment measures different than our eyes. That becomes very complicated.
Somebody is using a mechanical keyboard.
My bad.
Okay, so the other thing that's kind of curious is it's not just color or rainbow effect. There are other ways that our eyes kind of are different in the context of, let's just even talk about like clipping. Some of us are bothered by clipping more than others. And I think that's in that same suite. Like I myself, I'm not that bothered by clipping. I remember Pixel Pusher 15 came over to my house one time and was helping me set up some LS12000 settings. And he's like, that red is oversaturated in clipping on that jacket. And I said, I don't care. I like that saturation. I don't even see it. So he pointed it out. He dropped the red saturation. You could see some folds come back into the jacket on this particular clip. And he's like, this is better. You should probably use this. And I'm like, no way, that's not better. It doesn't look nearly as saturated and rich. Like I much prefer losing a little detail. I mean, you can still tell it's a jacket. You still have the main big coarse lines. You just don't have the exact smaller fold lines. I much prefer, in my vision, like the more saturated red, the deeper red that loses a little bit in clipping. Highlight clipping, same thing. Like some people might prefer a brighter image that loses a little bit of detail on the headlamp. Maybe there's not the filament showing as well. It's just more of a brighter image overall. And other people might say like, no, that doesn't look natural. I don't want that. I don't want any clipping. So there's perception beyond our physical eyes. Maybe, I don't know if it is our eyes or if it's just maybe subjective preferences, how much brightness we prefer over not, those types of things. So all that came into the equation here and some of the context of the conversation over the evening.
And I don't know if it'll be helpful or not, but I know you said you had some stuff, but I also have some cropped specific examples of things that we looked at when we were looking at the displays. Like, for example, I've got that Vegas scene, a few items cropped in and zoomed in. Like, for example, being able to see how colors presented better for greens, for example, in one projector versus another projector, to be able to literally read a sign on one versus another. Another
Sure.
one I have is the gravity clip where you could see the galaxy on the Valerion and it completely disappeared on the Epson.
Sure.
So I don't know if you'd be interested in looking
I
at that.
would. You can go ahead and bring those up now if you like. One of the things that I thought was interesting is last month when we did this comparison with the Epson LS12000 and 6 projectors in total, but the LS12000 and the Valerion Pro 2 were 2 of the contenders. All of us there preferred the, I think, John, all of us preferred the Epson LS12000's presentation on the majority of material. It might not have been a universal preference, but I think an overall preference. And if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know. You'd probably be the only one that wouldn't feel that way if you felt that way.
Well, I'll say that I spent money to try to get closer to the LS12000, if that tells you anything.
Yeah. And I remember even you reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to view the Max? I'd like to see if it can now beat the LS12000. So I think from that takeaway, like everyone preferred the LS12000. But at this a month later, the same exact LS12000, like the same settings, the same everything. There was 8 of us at this one, and all 8 of us preferred the Valerion, I think. I mean, maybe again, I'm speaking out of turn, but that's the vibe I got, is that all 8 of us preferred the Valerion Max this time.
I think it depends on the scene. There were a lot of there were some scenes I like the LS12000 more because the color.
I agree. I don't think it was a universal win in either case, but majority case, maybe not. I don't want to speak for you, Kevin. Did you think so?
I mean, it really depends on which clip we were looking at, or like what the scene looked like.
Sure.
I think, Kevin, you would be way more happy if I put an EBL low.
That was
take that a lot of your observations would be lessened at that point.
Mm-hmm. That's what it looked like from when we changed the setting.
And from my perspective, in particular, like people have asked me about what I think about the Valerion Pro in the past, and I said I can't really advise you. I can't really judge it because I see rainbows so bad on it. I don't know what to tell you. Like it's not something I could own. Now that I've seen the Max, like absolutely, it's going to go in my recommendation list as far as, hey, this only costs $3,000 or $4,000 depending on the sale you find, and it packs a lot of punch, and it's nipping, not equal to, but nipping on the tails of the NZ500, which costs 50% more, almost double in some cases depending on the sale you gather, because the NZ500 can be $7,000 MSRP or $6,000. It's on sale for now. And the Valerion could be $3,000 or $4,000, basically. And if you got the Kickstarter price, you got a super deal on it.
Right. I would say right now the bottom of the Max that I think is going to be around 4,000. We'll see how that goes as they continue to sell them.
So at minimum 50%, right? Because it's $4,000 versus $6,000. I do personally think, and not to jump to conclusions to the end of the show, but personally, I think the NZ500 was the most stable platform there by a large margin, and the best overall projector. So, of these 3, I think JVC is really they've had a lot of years now to perfect this, and they've got it down pretty good. Their native contrast is the best. Their tone mapping is the best. They don't have any like tricks that they're pulling. It's just native contrast based, and it's a really stable, mature platform. But it costs something. You're paying a little bit more for it. It is what it is. So, Ryan, you got your pictures ready to go?
I'm not entirely sure. I have it up as a second source on StreamYard, but I don't know if I have to do anything additional to be able to pump it to.
I've got it right here. Okay. Screen share on.
I'll do one. I'll start with this one, and I'll exaggerate this. Oh, it's doing that thing earlier where it kicks out right away.
Like pops back off again. Let's try it again. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, this one, and I'm going to exaggerate this. I'm going to pump the levels really severe. That way it
I didn't click anything. It just went away. Let me try doing a full screen on it and see what happens.
Okay.
Not that. How do I get, I got to get it shared first. Yeah. No, it's not even shared anymore. It went away on your side, I think, Ryan.
Actually,
shared on YouTube.
It's popping in and out of existence on YouTube.
I only see the 4 of us on the right side to assign to the main screen, not your.
Okay. Well, I'll try this one. I'll try it one more time.
Yeah. Sorry, audience. It was doing this earlier when we were trying to share a screen. It would just stay up there for a moment.
Oh, technology is infallible. Clearly, it's the users.
I clicked once, hands off. It pops up. Not clicking anything.
Cool. So I'm going to take the levels on this and I'm going to really crank it up. It didn't look this terrible in person, but I'm going to make this more obvious. The Valerion that you're looking at is on the left-hand side, and literally the entire shape of the galaxy. This is, I believe, the movie Gravity.
Mm-hmm.
When she gets flung out into space. This was one of the first examples of the evening where EBL, for all its faults that it can potentially have, it was doing a really good job in a scene like this, where it was holding on to a very pleasing black level. And it presented it looked in person perceptually even slightly darker to me than the 12,000 did. And yet it also retained the galaxy in the background as well. Not like gimmicky pumped up to the point where you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be seeing it that well. But it was just like that subtle bit of detail that basically fell away altogether on the 12,000 side of things. So that was one example that I saw that it impressed me more than I was expecting. Then another one, let me go ahead and pull up another one real fast. Don't save that. Do this one next. Yeah, this one's an interesting one because it's a tale of two cities inside of the same city.
Oh, I think I lost your screen again.
No, that's okay. I did that. All right. So this is the Valerion is again on the left, and the LS12000 is on the right. And this is super zoomed in. I think this is like 200 or 300% on a photo or on a video still, right?
It's very small on the live video is what he's saying, for sure. Like it's just one little tiny spot in a giant overall zoom. We'll show it in the full context later.
Yeah, and this zoom in is just to sort of help that context later as well. But most of the time, and this will be partially due, of course, to the fact that the Valerion does have a larger color space depending on the type of content, you could see the individual color information a little bit better. And then, fingers crossed that YouTube doesn't screw us over too badly, but especially in situations like this on the left side, you can see the individual elements of the light that are filling in the eye in the blue area. You can't see that at all on the 12,000. It just literally disappears. It clips it all together.
That was
Nor
also
on the NZ500.
NZ500. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was only the Valerion that had those little light bulb details.
In addition to that, but the funny thing about it was in other situations, depending on how the EBL was working, you would get some things that get pumped a little bit too high, even though it has a larger color space. Where, like, for example, the street signs we noticed with that green, for whatever reason, they went almost completely, a little bit too high. They got pumped a little bit too high, where you could actually make them out a lot better on the 12,000 than you could on the Valerion. So I want to put that part out there real fast because it makes it sound like, like, oh, wow, the 12,000 like absolutely got crapped on the whole night. And it wasn't that bad, but it was definitely a situation where finally, as someone who, like I said before, wasn't probably your biggest proponent for DLP, I could finally scratch my chin and go, you know what? I could see recommending this to all sorts of people now. Frankly, the one thing that the 12,000 still has going for it versus all the others, and it came in handy that particular night, it still has by far and away the most placement flexibility. Not for nothing, that's useful. So I like, for myself personally, I still can't use the Max, even, in my room. It's not possible for where I would want to place it. It doesn't have the flexibility for some things. There are, I believe, some we'll call it aftermarket efforts that are in place that could potentially change that. But even then, I still am trying to look for a projector that's just significantly brighter than either of these for my next move. But I was impressed. And then finally, one other one. I'll show this one.
But before you jump off there, let's talk about the green. So
yes.
For those that have followed the AVSForum thread in my review, after the Pro 2, there was a lot of conversations about colors, and we're talking about colors again, some good, some bad. But I did an effort to try to do some perceptual matching and calibrate my first TV as a reference. That effort did not go well. So these colors were out of the box resets for the color adjustments and also the grayscale adjustments. That said, getting some more efforts this weekend, I was able to get SDR and HDR calibrated on a particular TV that I purchased also over the weekend for this, and found that interestingly enough, that the green and HDR mode that we were watching in the HDR theater mode that we were watching in is actually less saturated than it is for SDR and also Dolby Vision. Why that is, I do not know. But it was definitely, an observation as far as going in and doing that perceptual match. That green, I really had to crank up the saturation on to get it in a better situation. So,
and that's sort of like its own dovetailing aside kind of thing, where it makes you realize, and you have to keep in mind when you read all these different reviews from different people, good grief, there are so many customizable settings at this point that in some cases are at, you could maybe make a case for some of the settings that, oh, this is closer to what the actual standard is for this particular one. But some of these other settings, they're almost content case by case, flip a coin on which you would want to employ on one movie versus another, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it so much more complicated than it might be otherwise to sort of like do apples to apples comparisons. So that's why I always try to like give a little bit of a grace to the poor reviewers out there who are like, they try their best to line everything up the best they can, and then someone comes along and is like, oh well, didn't you know that the firmware that came out 1 week ago and that one menu on that one item, we're going to have to burn you at the stake now.
Yeah, there is some of that for sure. I will counter a little bit on that. When you get to a more mature platform, there's not as much toggling of little features. Like Valerion is still actively changing their firmware and so forth, from what I understand.
Yep.
So like when you get to like an Epson that's been out for 3 years, the settings that I have on there, I haven't changed in probably 2.5 years. Like they are what they are, and they're not changing movie to movie, and I like them. So there's a little bit of that kind of dust in there until it settles down. Hopefully you won't always be dancing around that as a projector gets a little life on it.
And here's another little sort of aside. I wish there was a little bit more standardization in the world of electronics period for the names of labels on what a product does. Sometimes it's so obvious what it does. It's like, oh, RBE reduction on off. Great. I know exactly what that is. Another feature says turbo mode. Okay. Turbo mode. Let's go find out, because it's like it's a latency mode on this one, but on another projector it'll be called something else, and another TV it'll be called something else. It's like manufacturers, you need like some sort of governing body for that chunk. Anyway.
Sure. So I think one thing that's kind of interesting on this image before you leave, look at the building behind. You can see more of the architecture in the building behind, brought out with the tone mapping or whatnot, I suppose.
I think that's the positioning. So you're not seeing the full part of the building there. It's not matching up.
So it would be to the left of the T on the right and to the right of the T on the left at the top of the T. So I don't know, you won't be able to see my mouse because I'm not sharing, but Chirpy's mouse is moving around. Like up there, yes, exactly. And then on exactly.
Yes, that's what I thought you're talking about. Yeah, you can clearly see like the defined edges of the architecture here, and here it's almost completely dropped out. Yeah.
And you can also see that EBL might be brightening the scene a little bit based on that sans thing. And also if you look at it's subtle. If you look at the street sign that's like split down the middle, because this is a left-right image, like this is kind of the middle of the screen that's overlaid here. Yeah. There may be a little bit more darkness right in the middle on the right-hand side on the Epson side there, but it's like a little bit of a trade detail for contrast there. And I'm not sure it's worth the trade. Like I think the Valerion represented better for the most part here. The reds were redder. The picture's not showing that, but to my eye, the reds looked more saturated and more true on the Valerion Max on this scene and other scenes, not at very low light level. So Kevin mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you have a clip of that, we can show it probably in our side-by-side footage, but at some point, and John, I don't know if you had a chance to kind of like investigate that, but at very low ADL scenes, the Valerian seemed to kind of like be missing some of the color.
Yeah, that's again that I've kind of played around with that clip a little bit, looking at the different modes between SDR and Dolby Vision in comparison to the HDR. And oddly enough, in both this SDR and Dolby Vision, the lights show the redness in on the Valerion Max with out of the box settings compared to the HDR mode. So there's some opportunities there for Valerion and what's exactly driving some of that in HDR specifically.
Okay. Ryan, did you have more to show, or were those the two?
One more, and then I feel like I got the gamut of all the different characteristics that I wanted to display. Let me pop this one up. This one has to do with when an algorithm gets a little bit too feisty on one side and not enough on the other. So let's see here. This is the movie is The Revenant, and this is when there's a comet falling from the sky. You guys probably remember this particular comparison.
Sure.
And then this is let me know if you can see it.
I saw it pop up. I clicked it. Give it just a moment. We can see it.
All right. Yes, the LS12000 is on the right and the Valerion is on the left. And this was one of the easiest things that we came up with that showed that it was chopping off the highlights at the top in favor to keep the range elsewhere. So it wasn't quite guessing the scene correctly. And it manifests in situations like this where when you have a higher native contrast as your baseline, then the software doesn't have to do as much of the heavy lifting, right? Like some people talk about how, oh, well, the JVC has such great tone mapping. Well, it's partly the tone mapping. It's also partly because it has a lot more native contrast to work with in the first place. So in some ways, it doesn't have to work as hard to do as good of a job. So there's that too. But yeah, I wanted to pop this one up just to make sure that that was represented in the conversation.
And ignore that color difference again. That's the camera
Yes.
picking it up. It was not distinct like that. I mean, that
It
looks
was
like
not distinct like that. Correct.
crazy, but it didn't look like that in person to our eyes. It looks, unless you're Tim.
Yeah.
Poor Tim.
And we can trash him because he ditched us. So now game on.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where, and with the settings that I had with EBL and high, you're right that there's lots of conversations specifically in the owners group around clipping of highlights, and this is definitely one of those scenes where EBL high with the tone mapping that was currently available in this version of the software of the firmware will definitely clip. Now moving that to low is a much better for this highlight. Reason I personally don't like low is I don't like the speed at which it goes in and out of EBL. So it's a little slower. It's a little slower to engage, a little slower to come out. So my preference is high, with knowing that I'm going to have some clipping issues.
Yeah.
Okay. I can bring up some of that footage that I had, and we'll just talk through some of that. One of the things I kind of wanted to mention, so in one of the Valerion threads, or the active Valerion thread, I think it was that one, there was a gentleman talking about how the NZ500 could not possibly be bright enough for 158 inches to be enjoyable, and that was the wrong projector for that task. And I countered and said, hey, I've been around projectors. I've had projectors in my home theater for 23 years at this point. And I've been in a lot of rooms, and I've seen the flagships of all the different projectors. And I've seen every projector that's a flagship except for the Christie Eclipse, which is supposed to be the best projector. It's like $400,000. I've not seen that one yet. But I've been around the block, and the NZ500 in Sheldon's room is flat out perhaps the second best image I've ever seen. And so I can't agree with him at all that it's not capable of doing a 158-inch screen in Sheldon's room. And I think part of that is, probably a good majority of it actually, is that front third of the room being velvet. And so it takes away all the ambient light, and it just looks so much brighter for that. Because even in my room, I don't have velvet in my room. You can see it's a dark room, but it's not velvet. And I have the NZ500 in here as well. I liked it so much at Sheldon's room, I went and bought it like that same week. I said, that is fantastic. And I had an NZ7 at the time, the RS2100. So it's not like I was unfamiliar with JVC. I thought that's next level. I bought it. I got it here, and some of you guys have heard me say it before. I thought, man, my unit's defective. so so I asked Sheldon, like the very next day after I got it, I said, hey, can I bring this over to your room and validate something's wrong with it so I can start a return process and get a new one? I brought it over there, and guess what?
Fine. Yeah, it's not just acoustics where you say it's the room, stupid, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was worlds better in his room, and we did it side by side, and you couldn't tell the difference, and it was like, dang it. so then I got a little bit of velvet. I bought a black carpet to put down in the front of my room, and I put some velvet curtains up on the side wall. I'm covering in like 4 feet in my room, 3 feet in on one side, 4 foot on the other. It's not enough. It helped because I had a white carpet before and I didn't have any of the velvet treatment up around the screen, but it's not enough. To really do those JVCs justice and to like put the best because your room is the limitation on the JVC contrast. It's not the JVC in almost all cases. The velvet makes it be the JVC is the limitation. And it's a nice limitation to have as far as projected in the projection world. So all that to say, like, I feel like somebody who says you can't do that kind of screen on it, like an NZ500, it's not bright enough, is because they haven't seen it in the right room. And I kind of jokingly challenged them in a thread, hey, come to Kansas City, go watch this in Sheldon's room and tell us it's not good enough. Like, it literally is probably the second best projected image I've ever seen. And that includes projectors that cost many multiples. So just something to shoot for a little bit.
I'm losing you, Jonathan.
Yeah. Your mic went underwater.
Yeah. What did you say?
The last 20 seconds of what you said.
Really?
Oh, you sound good now.
Yeah.
You sound good now. You sound good now.
Okay.
You were talking about like the breast projector or something.
Yeah, I mean, just suffice to say that I've been in a lot of rooms, and I think that NZ500 in Sheldon's room is really something special, like the second best image I've ever seen on a projector, and it's quite capable. In fact, I think you'll see it. You'll see some of that in the little action camera footage, like how bright it really looks when it's completely surrounded by velvet. I think that's a big part of it. So I don't know how much I lost, but you got the gist of it, I think. Share screen. Let's do DaVinci and share.
I hear doggos. Oh, I see doggos.
Okay.
It's actually cats.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can see it just... Oh, yeah, sorry. Wrong species. Whatever.
So this is gonna, when we get to something that you guys want to see full screen, I'll just make it full screen. I'm probably going to turn off the chat overlay a little bit from time to time so you guys can get more. That should make it larger. Didn't really change much, did it?
A little.
Can I make it larger anyway?
That made it smaller.
Okay. Well, we'll put the chats up from time to time. This will just be a little better. Okay. So this was here. I'll just make it full screen, and if I want to look at you guys, I guess I'll look at you separately.
Why would you want to look at us? Seriously.
Let's try this. And it's still not big, is it? If I push F11, it will be, though.
Do it.
Not F11 there. F11 on the... Sorry, 1 second. F11 again. Let me get DaVinci to be F11. Or is it Control F?
That's much better. Stop right there.
Is that full screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is coming into the room. I just got a scroll wheel. I can go through this fairly fast. We're not gonna piecemeal this out. But this is the velvet side. So you can see like a third of his room is velvet. The carpet is velvet 3 or 4 foot out, and then he's got black carpet beyond that. And the back of the room is kind of like a gray paint, but with all the acoustic treatments that we showed earlier in the stream. So if I fast forward this a little bit into where the demo starts, this was just the demo for those who hadn't been to his room before. Again, this is a little DJI Action 5 camera, nothing special as far as the camera quality itself, but I just wanted to kind of show you like what we're talking about here. So this is Roger Waters' concert. It's quite black and it's quite bright, and it really looks fantastic. Like it's a great demo showpiece. It's not OLED quality. There's no projector that I've seen that's OLED quality, but it's good enough that you're not going to be like thinking like, oh man, I wish I had something a little better than this. At least I don't think so. Like I think this is like really a nice projected image. So let me fast forward a little bit here. More of the same, just some more concert scenes there. And then
Oh,
I
wait,
think,
wait.
I'm not seeing anything move.
Yeah, we're just seeing a still frame.
oh, you never saw anything move the whole time?
No.
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 Oh my goodness, why not?
I was like, he's getting a lot of mileage out of those legs.
Thank you.
Wow.
It's moving now.
I'm sorry,
It is
guys.
now. There we go.
I was fast forward a lot. So if I'm full frame, you don't get the update, huh? But you're getting
There
it
we go.
now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
what a
good.
bum deal. Okay,
Yeah.
well, it is what it is.
Actually, it's still almost full frame doing it this way now. So
Okay.
continue
Well,
on.
then let me just go back a little bit. So here's here's some of the video I was going to show you. So you can tell that it's quite bright in the room because look at the ambient light lighting up the black couch, the leg, whatever. Like you don't. I don't sit there and think like I wish this was brighter in his room. I honestly do feel that I wish the NZ500 was a little brighter in my room, and my screen is smaller than his and has a higher gain than his. But again, that's characteristic of the Velvet. His 158, mine's 144. I think his gain is like 0.7 and mine's like 0.85, but his still seems brighter because of the Velvet. So hopefully this is kind of getting a little bit of a taste of what I was talking through that you guys weren't seeing before.
Yeah.
And then let's go forward. I'll go to...
Could you scrub it back to when you first walk into the room?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
So
yeah.
here is the walk
right there.
into the room.
That's the most useful part right there to just give you an idea of the layout.
Here's like the third of the room being velvet, right? He's got velvet for the first 3 or 4 foot, and then there's a black carpet on the ground in front of that.
Yep.
And just kind of showing like how dark that area is.
Okay, perfect. Caught up.
I'm glad you guys were on here because I might have scrolled through this whole thing if I was by myself going solo and nobody would have saw a thing.
Yeah, they're gonna all be like, "Old man Jonathan's getting a little senile."
It was moving on my side. I guess because it was full screen, it wasn't doing it. Okay, so here's more. I mean, like, let's see if we can get some of these signage that come up there. Just really nice and bright and poppy, and then the black background on the Roger Waters concert. Really a cool scene. Again, this is NZ500 solo. We're gonna scroll forward a little bit. There was a scene there. You can just see, like, you can't even tell where the screen is. At least YouTube compression may be doing its thing, but on the action cam and in person, like, you couldn't tell where the screen began, and the black was good enough for that.
I mean, it's so dark that when I was sitting in the room the first time I went in, I thought the room was moving when he did the lens memory, because it physically looked like the room was moving because it was such a black void. It didn't look like the projector was changing lens memory.
So here's a scene from Top Gun Maverick, which everyone knows and loves. I don't think the NZ500 does a bad job at motion. I think John might have a slightly different opinion than me, and that's totally fine. I feel like certainly here you can kind of actually see some of the LCOS effect. Look at the character there at fast motion. My eyes don't pick that up in real life, but some people may. LCOS is not the fastest pixel refresh technology, so it actually is kind of a slower technology. And reality is, when I had the NZ7, the RS2100, I noticed it more than the NZ500. Like, I noticed if I was playing games, there was some blurring or some ghosting and stuff. I don't notice that so much on NZ500 with whatever differences they've made, but it is there. Like, if you got a super fast flicker fusion rate, like faster than mine, which I think is actually kind of high, then maybe it would bother you. But I don't, in person, I don't have a problem with the motion on NZ500. Now, John, you speak your piece on that if you do.
Well, it's the fact that I can't do anything about panning shots. I personally want some level of adjustment to where I can try to find a good balance. I know that you guys have heard this, but my wife is quite susceptible to soap opera effect, and I'm not. And so being able to find a happy medium where she's not, or she's enjoying the picture and I'm enjoying the picture. I've been able to do that with my LGs. I've been able to do that with the Maxes or the Valerians, and just not having any option to do that with the NZ500 is something that I don't prefer.
Yeah. So the NZ500 has no frame interpolation. It's one of the reasons frankly, they just feature stripped it because they could to get some product segregation. I don't think it's like some sort of super expensive they couldn't have put on there, but they did take it off of the NZ500, and I think the NZ700 as well. You have to step up to NZ800 or 900 to get the frame interpolation. Else do a video processor externally like MadVR or something to get your motion. But so it's just raw, whatever the source content is, native 24 hertz, native 30 hertz, native 60 hertz, whatever. Now, one thing we did notice in there, and I was surprised because really I always just run my source content like whatever it is natively. I don't try to do any up mixing with the 60 hertz from the PC or whatever. But Sheldon always uses 60 hertz from his PC and then forces like a 3.2 pull down to be the 24 hertz. And in reality, the JVC looked better that way than it did at native 24 frames per second, which I was kind of surprised on. I expected to see the judder more, but in his room I didn't. And it has probably something to do with the NVIDIA software and whatever processing they're doing because he's got an NVIDIA card. But I always just use, if it's 24 hertz source, I always use 24. It's 23.9, whatever, I use 23.9. I thought, what I'm saying is I think at 60 hertz refresh on the computer, I didn't really notice too much problems that way.
I think the issue that normally you would for some reason when we put it to 24, it was more choppy, especially in certain scenes with like dropping frames and other things. I think there could be lots of reasons why that would happen. Like it could be an older graphics driver, it could be the fact that he's got a 1060, it could be just different things. I don't think that's a projector specifically. I think that was from the hardware itself. Because when we did it at 24 frames a second off of the Apple TV, I didn't notice the same issues that we noticed with like frame dropping and stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also didn't notice any issues at 60. I didn't notice 3.2 pull down judder except for one clip when he had this computer at 60 hertz, which I was surprised at. I expect to see a lot of 3.2 judder, and I just didn't.
Yeah, it's really good.
So here, this is more setting stuff. I might just have to go through this a little bit faster because that was still the NZ500. We were just kind of chatting through things. Let me just go forward with the mouse to go a little faster than the scrub wheel. We're setting up the Valerion. But I think it's still, after this is set up, I still think he does the NZ500 first. So we should see that again. Oh, this is already the side-by-side footage. Okay. So
actually, while we're talking about brightness, before you get too much into the side-by-side, can you go back to the Valerion when we had it full screen?
Yeah, I wonder if I was seeing, when I told you that this is Valerion full screen stuff.
Yeah, because I was in the menus right there. I didn't know if you had any of the
the content. I for sure had footage. I don't know how I don't. And I should have LS12000 footage. Maybe the clips didn't import in the right order or something. We might catch them later. Like I just grabbed the whole pile and dropped them in here, but maybe they didn't go in order. Yeah, we might have to come back to that. This is one of them, but it's a very short clip. Yeah, I do have footage of each of them solo. But it's going to go straight into the mix next, I think. Okay, so this is where this begins with side-by-side. The NZ500 is on the left and the Valerion Max is on the right. If I said Pro through this video, I might have misspoken. It's always Max, so exchange that in any case. Pay no attention to the red color unless you're Tim Miller because we didn't see it look like this. It looked pretty similar between the two. Not perfectly color matched, but a lot closer than what the video shows. But what you're looking for here, what you're going to see is some native contrast differences as much as can be determined through an action cam and maybe some EBL type things, like see when the menus come up how much EBL like loses the contrast because it goes back to the more native contrast. But when you're actually in the scene and there's no menu up, look how much the frames match pretty well. Like the black background for the CinemaScope content and the 16:9 screen, it's pretty reasonable. Anything you guys want to talk about on this scene? Like I had some observations I'll share, but I don't need to lead that.
This is where I noticed it was a lot of gray in there, but again, it could have been the EBL setting in the Valerion Max.
Yes. Yeah, specifically when it shows the cave and it's doing the lighting up of things. That was one of the better torture tests for shadow detail of the evening, where you can see like the minerals and the cave walls, like, or even farther back than that one.
Okay.
Right. Let's see here.
Well, when it opens up too,
yeah,
right there,
right
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah,
Except we
that
gotta
was
get
one of the
more
best
mix,
examples
'cause
of the
that's
whole night of
spoiling it.
like shadow detail, and then just a little bit of specular highlight pop. And that was one of the few scenes where the JVC flexed its muscle a little bit to be the only one that like got even close to me being able to appreciate the scene. But a lot of the rest of the scene wasn't half bad on the Valerian. Just those particularly bad scenes like that, or like the beach scene in Moonlight on House of Dragon, scenes like that where it's getting so ridiculous, where your average nit level for the scene might be 3 or 2 or even below 1, which in some people have rightly pointed out can even be considered breaking mastering standards. They're so low in their light output. But yes, the JVC did, I thought, the best in that one.
I agree with that synopsis on the JVC doing the best, but I do want to point out I thought the actor's face was a little bit plasticky on the Valerian Max, and I don't know if that was something that could be fixed or not. I also noticed that the tone mapping, and we're not seeing it in the video very clearly, but the tone mapping was such that he seemed like he was in a much brighter environment, or perhaps the way the I think it would be tone mapping. In general, like his costume, you can kind of see it here. It just was much brighter on the Valerian Max, like not brighter in the sense of like if I took up my light meter brighter in the sense that it provided more detail. Like it raised the detail level on the scene to be brighter through the course of that quite a bit. In the cave with the mithril that the guys were talking about earlier, uh, JVC was the clear winner there. The Epson was kind of like grayed out, and the Valerian was like much lower contrast than it should be compared to the JVC. The cave was very dark, and I don't think that picks up as well here. There were some nuances definitely between the way these projectors presented on this scene.
When they open the cave too, and you see that those like blue lines that are really bright, you saw a lot of contrast with the JVC, and so that was the first one we saw it on. And there's like this epic music playing, and it looks cool. And then I saw it on the other projectors. I didn't feel the same feeling when I saw it. Now, obviously, I've seen it like 2 other times, but I also agree with that. I also thought in the Valerian for this one, and again, this could be the EBL in this particular time that we did it, but the guy looked like he was, he aged another 20 years, not in dwarf years, but in human years. All the gray, like the hair had like grays in it and stuff. But this is all like, those are things I noticed when I was looking at it.
Yeah, so here, I mean, again, it's going to be hard to actually determine, but the screen on the left looked like really, really dark, and the camera's doing trickery. It wasn't blue like that. And the screen on the right was just kind of more gray. It wasn't purplish, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, it wasn't
So,
purple.
so the camera is doing some weird trickery. But here's an example. Like it just looks like, see, like the Valerian looks brighter, like it brought out more detail in the image on his face, and that was pretty consistent through this clip. I don't know that it was always good because it seemed like sometimes it was a little bit too much compared to like what it would be natively, but it was definitely a distinct difference.
So that could be where you get into. I was running medium on the active contrast. That's not the right name for it off the top of my head, but where if I turned it off, it might have been a slightly closer representation. Also, I had dark detail on, so I've went back and looked at this clip specifically, toggling on and off those settings. I didn't see a huge impact, but that said, there may have been a slight impact.
This is not going to be real time, although I guess I could push play and show you. We didn't do any like latency checking or performance mode, gaming mode, but we did notice like in just default out of the box, there's no latency settings on JVC to even change on the NZ500. On the Valerian Max, we talked about on the thread the other day, there is like a DLP turbo mode that would be low latency. We didn't do that, so this is without that. But now this is natural. So on the left is NZ500, and on the right is the Valerian Max. There's the latency difference in whatever is just kind of the default settings.
Yeah, so I've looked into that a little bit further and got actually looked back at some of the hookups information and testing that he did, and in a theater mode like we watched it in, without any game mode or DLP turbo or high refresh rate, the latency on the Valerians are around 138 milliseconds, and so that's really, I think, driving kind of what you're seeing there. Now, on that subject, and that's at 4K 60. You turn on, you go into PC or game mode from a picture setting. That same latency drops to 34, and then as you turn on the DLP turbo mode and the high refresh rate mode on a 4K 60 image, that drops the latency to 18. And that's similar to what Vonley, my son, he was using my projector for a little while, doing some gaming on it, and that's kind of what he was seeing as well in those settings, was around that 18, that high teens range. Now, if you jump down to 1080 and then go to 120 or 240, the lowest you can get on 120 is 12 milliseconds, and then if you did a 1080 240 input, you can get down to 5 milliseconds on the Valerion.
Well, 5 and 12 milliseconds, even 20 milliseconds, nothing wrong with that. Those are nice. So on this one, it was a pan scene. You're not going to pick this kind of thing up on a motion camera, on a camera, because it's not going to just see what your eyes see. But again, people prefer different things. I think most of us prefer the Valerion Max frame interpolation over the Epson on this kind of scene, specifically where you're evaluating frame interpolation. The LS12000 did better than NZ500. NZ500 did the worst because it doesn't have any frame interpolation. And what you'd see in person was like when it would go across this guy's head, for instance, his head would be bobbling back and forth real fast mechanically with like a 24 hertz native thing with no frame interpolation. And it'd be relatively smooth with the Valerion Pro or the LS12000. Now, I wonder if earlier, when I told you that I was seeing some of the LCOS blur, I wonder if that was actually the DLP, because I think my clip's imported out of order. Because look, here's the DLP, and it's got that same color. We'll have to see when I'm not seeing the LCOS blur here. So I might have misdiagnosed that because the clips didn't come in the order I thought they did. We can visit that more as we go through here.
I didn't mind the 24 hertz not interpolated version on the NZ500 or any of the projectors. I thought the motion was fine.
For most material, I thought it was fine. I thought that old clip was insufferable to watch. It just in regular 24 on the projectors.
I think that
was such a good torture test. I don't think that's completely fair to, base something, off a single clip when most of the time it's not going to bother me that much. But I think that's even when we started into that conversation of wishing for variable frame rates in our entertainment. And that's when we brought up the whole variable frame rate with the Avatar movies, where the action movies get a higher frame rate, but then like the regular dialogue sections get the lower one. They're going up and down. But, in that clip right there,
it's not even showing what we would want to show.
Yeah.
It's not, the camera's not good enough to pick it up. But what we were noticing in this one, so JVC on the left, Valerion on the right, is that there would be bricks showing on only the JVC. The Valerion and the Epson did not have the bricks showing. It didn't have the native contrast to pick it up. But the camera's not good enough to show it, so you just have to take our word for it. Okay, so on this one, this is a scene from, what movie was this?
The Reverend.
Yeah, that's right. We were looking at like the background, and again, the camera's not going to be good enough to pick it up, but the NZ500's native contrast in the black and the background was just clearly the best out of these different projectors.
I think I actually might have I could grab some for later to talk about, but I think I actually have some still image grabs of stuff like that too. I might be able to pop up later, especially specifically that scene.
That'd be good. Can you guys see my mouse, or is it not showing on your screen?
It is.
I didn't hear you. It is or isn't?
It is on the scrn.
Okay, very good. So even with a bad camera, you can still kind of see that the NZ500's black was just better on that scene. And also, this was another one that kind of had muted colors for the Valerion Max, and it kind of sound like we're knocking on the Valerion Max. We're not. I was my second favorite of the night. I'm just pointing out things that we saw, and that's what we're looking at here. So, like the NZ500 looked really natural, like the fire colors and his face and everything, and the Valerion Max looked a little bit muted, and even a little bit too bright, perhaps. Before the menu popped up, it was surprisingly good. It belied, like it did better than what its native contrast would spec. Like EBL did okay here, or whatever's doing it. Like it wasn't as white as I would expect it for DLP, but it was not an NZ500. Okay, so this is the scene that Ryan showed earlier with the comet, and on this display it looks pretty similar, but it was not similar in person. The Valerian looked washed out on that comet drop and muted. Ignore the color again, except for you'll just have to kind of hear what we said because that's what we saw.
Yeah, it wasn't purple in person. The colors were more similar.
Okay, so here's Avatar again, not purple. They match to our eyes. You can maybe see a little bit more detail in his face here, right? Like more clarity on the little dots and stuff. I don't know. I didn't think there was like a gigantic difference between the two here. The star field was better on the NZ500. You can clearly tell here it's more black. But the Valerian was not like unwatchable in any sense. Like I enjoyed the picture on both, especially when we did them solo. Like, you know, that was one of the reasons I wanted to do it solo, is because sometimes when you're doing side by side, you think, well, like this projector smashed that one. But if you're watching it solo and you don't have the frame reference side by side, you're not like thinking about like, oh, that contrasts a little bit better. You're just enjoying the video. So there's merit to doing both, because sometimes these little side by sides make us into like critics that we otherwise would not really care to worry about.
The thing that was also better about having the full screen is you got to see it on the full screen instead of the side by side where you're seeing a quarter size or a third size of it versus the full screen, because the light reacts differently depending on that. If you remember the JVC, when we made it smaller, it had a lot more light output, and when we pulled it back, you could see the light get dimmer and dimmer as it went back further.
Yeah, and I thought this one is particularly interesting because, look, you can tell clearly that the Valerian has worse contrast than the NZ500, but at a certain point in this scene, and maybe John knows how to speak to it better than I do, look, right here, it's flip-flops. And now the Valerian has better contrast than NZ500 for a little section in this clip. Like you can tell there's actually more, and I don't know, maybe the YouTube compression, maybe even what my peers are seeing here, but in person and in my source video here, there's a little bit more grayness to this left side than the right for a brief moment. It doesn't stay that way, but it just shows that EBL has some tricks up its sleeve to give some more dynamic contrast. Here's that nebula or star galaxy out in the distance that Ryan showed earlier in the clip. Didn't even really show up on the Epson because it's lost in the gray floor. But
Right.
both the Valerian and the JVC 500, NZ500 were able to show that nebula in the background. Anything else to add there, fellas? Nope. Okay.
No, sir. Silence is agreement.
So the faces video.
I thought I hate to be like the the bad guy here, but when the last scene we were looking at, the Valerian got really dark in that scene with where she was flying away, but I almost thought it was so dark that you couldn't see as much detail in it. It was harder to notice with the side by side, and that might just be because there are two projectors putting light in the room. But when it was just by itself, especially when it was further back in the back of the room, I noticed that it was much darker in this scene where she's flying back.
Well, the reason for that is, and that's kind of what I was hoping to show and talk about earlier when I asked to see if there was content for the Max on full screen, which that's fine. When we did the full screen, I had it on Cinema One because that's, walking in, it was like, this is the settings that I use at home. So it would make sense that you would maybe lose some detail because the contrast wouldn't be quite as good, as the iris isn't as closed as it is with Cinema 2. So that's probably what you were seeing there.
All these things are so much worse than what we actually saw in person on this action cam. I apologize. So you're just getting a sense of it. We won't have to linger here. I thought this clip I had tuned my LS12000 for. The LS12000 won this clip for me personally. But that's just because I tuned it with my own eyes for what I preferred. I felt like the Valerian actually on this one kind of had some situations where I saw a little bit of clipping on their faces. There was a section on one of the clips where it put a little clipping on her lip right here, but underneath her nose between her lips. And at one point I thought her lips looked a little bit plastic on the Valerian, but that's kind of being nitpicky. And and I don't think like if you were watching them that you would like just abhor one and love the other. This is a clip that looks pretty good on
And we
most
switched
devices.
sides for the Valerion here, by the way.
It's what?
And we switched the side the Valerion was on when we went to the 12,000 versus the Valerion. So maybe.
Yeah, but this is still the NZ500 right now, isn't it?
Oh, okay. I thought you said it was a 12,000.
I don't think we switched clips. We're still in the same clip.
Okay, sorry. I'll
Yeah.
shut up.
No, that's fine. So this is still, I mean, this is a little bit of, can you tell this on this scene? Like here's a little bit of kind of oddity that the Valerian was introduced. And I saw a little bit of that too, where maybe it makes some of the detail, like the pores and stuff, look a little bit too enhanced maybe, and that's a sharpness setting that maybe could be changed. I don't really know. Maybe John can speak to that, but it was a little bit harsher in some situation. The hair looked a little thicker in some of the context. This and the Lucy clip on the Valerian, where it looked more fine on the native 4K panel of the JVC. But again, I mean, if it's not a side by side, how much do you notice or care? It's probably just depends on how picky you're going to be. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so this is something I was curious how EBL would handle it, and frankly, EBL did well. It's a bright beam of light that's going through the audience on the Interstellar clip. You can see a little bit of brightening right there that came up, but it's more in the in person. This actually, the Valerian did quite a bit better than the Epson on this particular clip. Just because the Valerian's EBL could make this scene, and I think it's EBL. I mean, John, I would assume it's EBL because native contrast wouldn't beat the Epson, so
No.
it had to be EBL.
Yep.
It was blacker. Just frankly, the black floor was blacker on this scene on the Valerian than it was on the Epson. And even right here, it looks like the I mean, I don't know if it's coming through to you guys, but on my camera, looking right here, the black floor looks blacker on the Valerian temporarily than on the JVC. Now in person, I don't think the Valerian beat the JVC on this clip, but on the camera, you can tell that the EBL is doing its work, and it's doing good work. Here's the starfield from the Star Wars motion picture. This was an interesting one. You were talking about this earlier, Kevin. Do you want to speak a little bit more on this since we have the clip in front of us?
Yeah, it's Star Trek though. Just
Okay, what did I say?
he said Star
Wars.
Oh, sorry. True, Star Trek.
It's the first Star Trek film. So, so these stars here on the JVC, they were like nice pin lights. They looked really good. I was actually very surprised. And then on the Valerian, for some reason, there's like a. Can you zoom in on that somehow? Because okay, because on the sides of those white dots, you'd see like a color bleed, like a magenta color or something like that. And so it wasn't a white dot. It was kind of it looked like I needed to focus my eyes or something. Like, you know, if you had glasses, you got to clean them off or something. That's what it felt like. Like I was just not able to focus correctly on the white light. But it's because either it's like an alignment issue or something else. But that's what it looked like. Like it wasn't 100% aligned at those pixels. We even tried turning off the 4K mode where it does the e-shifting. We turned that off, and that didn't fix it either.
I think that's another one of those things that maybe in a vacuum, and when I say that, I mean when you're watching it solo, you might not notice that, but side by side, you did notice, and we all noticed it and talked about it. But I mean, when we were watching that clip solo, because we watched all these things solo, did you have a problem with it soloed? Did you think?
I'm checking my notes right now. I think I did, but like I'm gonna check my notes.
It's a pretty long Starfield clip you can see here. And when I single out Kevin on that, if you guys have anything that you want to weigh in on, by all means, Ryan or John, you can opine as well.
No, unfortunately, my observations on that clip were identical. Like, I don't think anybody. It was a really easy thing to see in person, which is why everybody in the room was like, "Yeah, the JVC clearly looks like, you know, pin lights."
Yeah, I noticed it solo. It's in my notes here.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Suzume. How do you say that, Kevin?
Suzume.
Okay, and it's meant to be a real bright highlight clip. It's got like brilliant blues and just kind of showing the brightness of the projectors. And I think Ryan, you mentioned that you were looking at like detail levels and stuff on here as well.
This was HDR as well. This is HDR clip.
Yeah. And especially, you know, it would be like the almost neon blues that on the specular highlights on the lake or something like that in a clip like this, where it's not just about brightness, but also like the extra color volume, like those really saturated neon colors that normally will like clip detail. And plus, DLP, you know, they have, it's maybe not as cinematic a look, but it can often have a sharper look, and especially in animation, that can be the case, which is why this particular clip I actually thought presented the best on the Valerion. So, I mean, especially with a clip like that where the average ADL is so high.
This is probably the clip that where the Valerion bested the Epson LS12000 the strongest.
It was crazy.
And we're not showing the LS12000, just to be clear, if you're kind of skipping back and forth. This is the NZ500 on the left versus Valerion Max on the right, just as it's been the whole time. But the black floor, the native contrast on the Epson LS12000 isn't really good enough for the scene. I did notice a little bit of clipping in the bushes at one point on the Valerion that I didn't notice on the JVC, but I think John fixed that by changing the setting, and it might be right here, where some of the bush highlight just looked like kind of white light instead of like branches. But the key point of the scene is when she comes out here in the woods and she is looking to see what's the dog's barking at, and there's aliens that appear out from behind the tree. This is X-Men Dark Phoenix. And on like the Epson LS12000, it's lost in the gray black floor. You can't really see what's going on in the background.
You can't even see the aliens. Like I didn't even know what was going on in that scene on the 12,000.
Yeah, and both the Valerion and the NZ500 did really well with the scene where you can kind of see them in this clip where the aliens are coming out from behind the tree. In person, I think the NZ500 did a little bit better, but both of them handled this admirably.
One thing I want to know, you're not distracted by it, like you might have been with the 12,000, where all of a sudden you're sort of going, "Now what's going on?"
Yeah, with the 12,000, it looked like looking at like an LCD with the backlight all the way up or something. In the dark scene, it didn't look very good. So I one thing I want to point out in that part with the Valerion was this is also the scene that we noticed the most clipping on the lights.
Right here, this one, or are you talking about the?
Yeah, this one. It was way easy to see it with the side by side. I don't know if it was as easy to see it when it was by itself.
Yeah.
What particular did you want to see?
The lantern light when they were panning over to the house, right there, right smack in the.
I mean, there were multiple lights here. If you scroll all the way back to the beginning of it, where the lights come down from the meteors or something, you could see it in there. It was so like all. So this is with the EVL on high. So this is just specifically that setting. But these lights coming down from the meteor were all clipped. And then if you keep going, there are like lanterns on the side that were all showing up. All of those lights, hang on, we haven't seen them yet. These lights over here on the sides of the whatever this is, like a bridge or something, they were all clipped. And then this light in the house was clipped. And then I thought the colors on the faces didn't look as good. Like she looked like a ghoul in this scene here, the main lady. And it's mainly, I think this is all related to that specific setting, but it's why we're seeing that kind of black for her. So we're also losing all of the highlights.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the NZ500 ran away with this scene, but I think that the LS12000 represented very poorly on the scene.
It did. It was really bad. This is why I made that joke to you about the like you had this projector.
So this particular scene, we watched this last month on the Pro 2, and this scene was like, I talked about in the last podcast, so I won't really go into it heavy. But my goodness, this was Rainbow City with this chrome and the silver and so forth, and these bright lights with the Pro, and I saw not one hint. Not me personally, my eyes didn't see one hit of rainbows on this. So it was like a night and day difference, where this is unwatchable to me on the Pro 2 and quite enjoyable to me on the Valerion Max.
And just for clarity, that is with the rainbow effect elimination mode on anti-RBE.
Yeah, it helps to be a little bit repetitive for people who are coming and going on the stream.
Absolutely. And when we turned it off at one point, we asked them to turn it off. It was all back to just craziness again. Like for my eyes, like just Rainbow City, this chrome scene right here. It's like, bam, just blowing my eyes out with rainbows. The steel truck on this scene blows out my eyes with rainbows. In fact, like when the rainbow reduction mode is off, or on the Pro 2 that doesn't have rainbow reduction mode on it yet, there would be like rainbows shooting off the front and back of the thing, like some sort of George Jetson scene where it was like some sort of power cycles coming off the back. And it was just, it was psychedelic to my eyes, just crazy with this chrome, but nothing. But like that was fixed with rainbow reduction to me. Don't pay attention to the colors. Once again, repetitive there as well. They looked similar to my eyes, to everyone's eyes, except for Tim's. Was there anything to talk about much in this scene? I thought Valerion did good on this scene too.
That scene honestly presented fairly decently on all three, to be honest.
Yep. All right, we'll skip through this scene. I agree. I think they all looked good. I thought the Valerion had a little extra brightness over the other two, the way we had it configured, and I like that extra brightness. Okay, so this is the scene where the only scene of the night where I saw rainbows on the Valerion in content, and if you want to call credits content. But when the names pop up here, that flashed rainbows to my eyes, even with rainbow reduction mode on. But otherwise, no. And the other thing that's of interest here, watch how the NZ500 handles these credits. They come in, they fade out. And it looks like there's some blooming, but that's my camera. In person, I didn't notice blooming on the NZ500. However, the Valerion on credits lights it up and has a nice, you can see there's a difference in native contrast. That's fine. But what was kind of interesting was EBL was kind of pulsating a little bit with the big letters coming up and down. You can see that coming and going. Like right here, they're pretty similar contrast, and then you lose that contrast as the name comes to the full brightness because EBL can't engage fully.
Not just that, but the one thing that doesn't quite come up quite as well here, probably partly because the camera itself is also exposing up and down a little bit, was the fact that it actually started at its highest dark gray before the titles faded in. So it was like an elevated gray floor, and as the title would fade in person, that gray floor actually dropped. So it was weird to watch the gray floor pulse up as it got darker, fading back to black, and then the title would fade back in. So it was almost like the trading of the black floor was going in the opposite direction your eye wish it would do. It was a weird sort of cognitive dissonant kind of moment on how it was treating it, which is what I think brought up the discussion of a full fade to black option would have really helped the Valerion there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Now, the credits here where you go into the scrolling instead of the pop-in, the Valerion Max handled this frame interpolation way better. Like it just looked smoother. You could read it. The JVC has that 24 hertz judder. It's not very fun to watch on the scrolling credits. Camera won't pick that up. You just have to see it in person.
Now, if I had used EBL low, maybe some of that pumping would be subsided because, as I said, the algorithm's a little slower on its engagement and disengagement. So we'd have to, try that and see, what that presents, but would be an option if you were really into your credits.
Scrolling. Okay, here's the Las Vegas clip that we all had some interest in. So this is a Sony developed high quality cameras, 4K HDR YouTube clip. Oh boy, look how much it makes it look like it's blown out on the JVC. It was not blown out. It looked great on the JVC. Unfortunately, it's off the screen on the Valerion right there. But you can tell right away the native contrast is very different when EBL is not engaged. 4,000 to 1 versus 40,000 to 1 kind of thing. And here was something, it's actually showing up on the camera as having a bunch of color, but in person on the right, on the Valerion Max, it looked muted. There was not as many colors, with the exception of like the red. I'll use my mouse to point it out. This red on the Valerion was deeper and more velvety, more real than the red over on the JVC. But all this stuff, these lights here were all like muted white, kind of just almost like not colored, almost like black and white. And over here on the JVC, this all looked really real, like a real cityscape with different colored lights and stuff. So there's that muted color we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's one of the scenes that I've gone back and looked at in SDR versus HDR and Dolby Vision. And in both SDR and Dolby Vision, you have the red lights that you see on the NZ500 that wasn't really represented well with the HDR mode.
So this is that scene, I think, or is it maybe a little further in where you had that little snip cut out? Maybe it's a little further in.
Yeah, it's further in.
Okay. We were just playing some settings on the Valerian, so we would restart the clip. I think we've done that at times in these different things. Playing between Cinema 1, Cinema 2, other little settings that John wanted to kind of play with, or someone in the group asked, hey, could you try this, that type of thing. Oh, we're out of that clip, so maybe we didn't get the specific spot. I turned the camera on and off. It wasn't recording live the whole time, but I think you got the gist there. I saw a little bit of like plasticness on Gwendolyn. What's her name?
Close.
I think that was the clipping again that you were saying there. Because
Yeah, I mean,
the parts where you notice you're saying plasticky, those are parts where I noticed it was clipping.
Yeah, I mean, you probably could fairly use those words fairly interchangeably. The crown on her head looked a little bit better on the NZ500. It had some detail on the Valerian that perhaps wasn't on the NZ500, but the face looked better on the NZ500. Like this clip was NZ500 winner for sure, I think. Why are we back to this one again? Somebody must want to point something out, so we went back to it. Okay, this is Baby Driver. We were comparing frame interpolation between the LS12000 and the Valerian and the JVC. On the screen right now is JVC and Valerian Max. Clearly, the Valerian Max really did a great job with frame interpolation. So, like when you got to places where they were writing on the wall, like right here, writing on a tree, writing even their dresses as they're dancing here. Let's go forward a little bit. Right here, like the writing on the tree. It was in person, it was just a lot more clear on the Valerian. This is never going to show up on a camera. Just have to take our word for it. Well, kind of shows up there, but it was just in motion, way clearer on the Valerian and the LS12000 both. Because again, the NZ500 doesn't have any frame interpolation. You guys have anything else to add there? That was really what we were looking for, I think.
Nope.
Nada.
I think I remember one of the projectors when he went past that tree. I saw some art. I want to say artifacting, but that's not technically what it is. It's like it draws him weird as he's coming out because he wasn't there in the previous scene. So when it's trying to interpolate, it draws him weird. But that's a thing I always notice with any kind of frame interpolation is that kind of issue that would happen. Like when somebody goes past a pole or a tree or something like that that's vertically standing up and they're horizontally moving, you'll see weird issues with frame interpolation.
This is showing up better on the camera than it probably did in person, but there was something here, and that's why we went back to this clip. Like her hair looked like it was thicker, like hairsprayed or something, more so on the Valerian than it did on the JVC. You can actually see right here that it's just showing up more than the JVC. It was there on both images. It just looked thicker, or like, again, hairsprayed more so on the Valerian than the JVC on that scene.
On that clip, I did go back and look at different sharpness settings, and I did not see a change to what we discussed that evening. So pretty consistent regardless of sharpness.
Okay, so now we're firing up the Epson, and now the Valerian is changing sides.
Yep.
Well, it'll be a little bit forward. We had the Epson. He didn't want to. I don't blame him. We didn't want to take the projectors off the ceiling because you have to do a bunch of extra work. So we just moved the Valerian from side to side, and the Epson was on the right side, so it got the right side of the screen in this one. Did you guys have any observations from Avatar? Let's see if I didn't. Probably did I not capture any space? Oh, that would have been the scene to compare there. You can look for clipping here. It looks like the Valerian is actually clipping a little bit on the left, but that when you had a Cinema 1, perhaps?
No, any side by sides other than requests to change it was in Cinema 2.
Okay, so
but EBL high.
Yeah, I certainly you can kind of see that it's clipping a little bit, but it's one of those things that in person I don't notice something like that. Like when we're watching this single, I wouldn't know that there was supposed to be 2 rocket trails instead of one single rocket trail. So it's not going to bother me. Now, Kevin, you might have a different opinion that you're just saying, like, I know that scene has highlights that I'm missing. I don't think that my mind works that way.
Like you said, when you had Pixel Pushover, he was talking about the same thing at your house. I said the same thing when I came over too. So it's I just noticed I don't know how I can see them or why I can see them. Maybe it's because I'm used to my OLED or something. But I noticed the clipping, the highlight clipping, very easily.
And maybe it helps also, like, what's your primary display you're normally looking at, by the way?
Yeah, I'm looking at a OLED.
Yeah. And a giant 98-inch, what is it? A
G2. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so this is, again, now we're on the LS12000 versus the Valerion. LS12000's on the right, Valerion's on the left. You can see the native contrast cannot keep up, and even the dynamic contrast cannot keep up with the Valerion's EBL. So when we get to that scene with the nebula, you're going to see the Valerion did pretty well in this scene.
Yeah, the
Right
LS1000 here didn't even have the nebula. Like
Right
we
there.
didn't
And
even
look, it's
see
a
it.
big difference. And it's not showing why it doesn't. It's not that it's probably not there. It's that the gray floor actually is elevated on the Epson, I think, right? Maybe it'll show it at some point. I mean, it just wasn't as black.
Yeah, like you couldn't see it.
It looks curious because it looks like on the camera here that it was black on the Epson, but it was not.
That might be exposure.
It was on an auto exposure, so probably so. This is probably more realistic of like what the gray floor looked like between the two. I mean, maybe not that bad, maybe that bad.
I think I remember talking to Ryan on this one, and he was saying it changed throughout the scene in that one.
Ryan, do you remember what you said on that one?
Yeah. So especially at the very end of the clip is when the Valerion was looking the best. Over the life of the clip, it wasn't as big of a wipeout. It was the end of the clip that it just got so pronounced that you were seeing more detail with the Max and not paying any obvious penalty with it going up and down inside of the native contrast that it has available to it. It did a remarkably decent job.
So on this clip, I liked this clip better on the LS12000, I think. And I recall specifically thinking that because the oil on that guy's head was a deeper black. The interesting contrast on the LS12000 is pretty strong. And I again, the color difference don't pay attention to because we didn't see that with our eyes. But I personally liked the little bit deeper black on the guy's head with the oil, the little more saturated black. That's what I felt like on that clip. And that might be something that can be changed or configured, or probably is something that can be changed or configured. That was just my observation. One subjective observation. So this is not going to be a good clip to tell, but we all, I think, thought the Valerion Max's frame interpolation was a little better than the LS12000. Pick up some individual frames here. But again, that's syncing with the camera. There's all kinds of nuances here. The one thing I will say that's kind of nice is the Epson just has low, medium, and high. And in my opinion, medium and high are junk. Like no one would ever use them. So you really only have low. And the Valerion Max has like slider bars that you can toggle to your preferences. And so John showed us his preferences and his wife's preferences, and I like both of them. Being able to adjust it to your own taste is fantastic.
The slider bars are only a 10 point, I think. So you only get...
That's correct.
Okay. It's the same as like an LG that you would see. And then one slider's for 24 frames a second, the other's for 60.
Well, 10 is better than 1.
Yeah.
It goes.
Is it? Well, it's one louder.
All right, here's Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I don't know. We're not, unless you're in person and you're comparing colors that look off in the camera, it's probably not even worth comparing that, at least visually here. Okay, so the Oliphant. I included this scene specifically because I thought that the frame interpolation on the LS12000 did a poor job on this scene, and I wanted to see how the other one handled it. It maybe wasn't as telling as I thought, but at the very beginning of this scene, when the elephants first come in and they're charging, the frame interpolation on the LS12000 makes those CGI soldiers look exactly like they are. I mean, they're little CGI soldiers, and they look real fake, and it takes you out of the moment. I didn't notice
saw that on the
much on the
NZ500 as
Valerion.
well.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I saw that on the NZ500 as well. I thought the CG looked bad the first time I saw the scene on the NZ500. I noticed it immediately. I said it to Ryan. I think I said, "Wow, that CG is really bad." So even without the frame interpolation, I thought it was bad. So I'm assuming the reason you're seeing it bad on the Epson is because it is bad, and then it looks even worse when you try to make it smoother.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of those things where we all see a little bit differently. To my eyes, the NZ500 looks a lot more agreeable with the no frame interpolation on this particular scene than the LS12000 does with frame interpolation. And I thought the Valerion Max was a little bit better than the LS12000 on the frame interpolation, but I think they probably, on that particular scene, I probably would have preferred it off on both, just subjective, personally speaking myself. So LS12000 right, Valerion left. And pay attention to the color. You're just looking at kind of a black level. So EBL is a mixed bag. And I think I say mixed bag, but I really appreciated it more than I didn't in our demo session. Like I thought it was beneficial overall, but it's not universally beneficial.
Right.
So this would be a scene like where it's not, where you got enough ADL on the screen, enough highlights on the screen that it can't activate. And so your black floor is less than when it does activate. Is this the scene you grabbed that scene from?
No, it's the one with CVS in it.
Same sort of thing here.
Oh, if you go back real quick, there's a scene where it's all red. It's one right before this. It's like a pizza shop there, right there. Yeah, this one. I thought this one, the Valerion, looked really good for what it had. All of them look good, but I mean, like specifically, I was looking at it. It looked very real and very good here with that neon red coming out. It doesn't look good in the video that you took, but in person, this looked really good on the Valerion. This particular scene with all this red in it.
Yeah, the red was actually a more true red, I think, on the Valerion than either the JVC or the Epson. So the red was particularly impactful on the Valerion.
Yeah, going. I think it's after the Paris is the one you're looking for.
We rewound it again to probably check a setting. Okay. I mean, you can tell when EBL is activated, right? Because like right here, EBL is working. I don't even understand how EBL knows when it can or can't turn on. Because like sometimes, I mean, this seems brighter, so you wouldn't think EBL would be on.
This was SDR too, right? No.
No, it's HDR.
Okay, yeah, this was HDR. This was the one that ran at 60 frames a second. Now I remember. That's what was different about this clip from the others.
This was playing with the dynamic tone mapping slider. It's static tone mapping on the LS12000. So
we were looking at that sign at the bottom, in the very bottom of the scene, that red one.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
Yeah, and it was not even on the JVC. It did not have any detail. It was just red. Whereas on the Valerion, it had all this detail. You could actually read the text on it. Something about the reds, it does a really good job with it, and especially I think it's the tone mapper. So this is what I was saying, like sometimes the tone mapper is good and sometimes it's not, and I wonder if a lot of it was the EBL, but in this particular scene the tone mapper was doing such a great job. You got all this detail from that sign in the red that was behind the white text.
Well, that and the larger color space. I can't remember the exact. I know on the Max it's 95-ish on Rec 2020 that it can present. And the 12,000 is, I don't even think the 12,000 gets 100% of P3. It's lower than that. So.
Oh, okay.
This sign here is what Kevin's talking about. And on the Valerion, it had texture and it had like detail in the red sign. And on the NZ500 and on the LS12000, it was just red. So we were playing. I'm glad you remembered that, Kevin. We were playing with the HDR slider to see like, hey, can we bring that detail in here? And we never could. I think when we got to 16, it like really faintly showed up, but not even nearly as well as it showed up over here, regardless. And 16 is just too dark. I mean, you could see what it just kills the picture completely.
Yeah.
So you would never use it.
I think we kept it at 4 or 5 the whole time.
Yeah, 5 was where we left it for the majority of the time. Okay.
Yep, there you go. Go back.
This is
Right
the
there.
scene.
Yeah, this is where we saw the TI.
So you can see the street sign is right here and right here. And for whatever reason, as good as the greens were on, or good as the reds were on the Valerion in person, the greens kind of had the upper hand on the Epson. Oh, and worth noting, and I think we mentioned it earlier, but just to call it out, only on the Valerion could you tell that this sign had individual light bulbs in it.
Mhm.
Like you could tell it was composed of a bunch of red lights. On the Epson and the NZ500, it was just a solid color, like it was basically a clouded or smoked LED panel. But here you could tell it was light bulbs. So that was interesting. And I don't think it was just that sign. Like there was more of that through the cityscape that you could tell individual light bulbs on the Valerion for whatever reason over the LS12000 and NZ500.
Yeah,
Now,
there
how
was a
much?
CVS sign, you could see it too, like the neon behind the light.
Yeah. Again, that's probably one of those things that you probably won't ever notice if you're watching it single because you just wouldn't know any better. But when you're side by side, you notice these little advantages and disadvantages. What was that little flash? I saw something flash. What does that say?
Media offline.
Media offline.
Interesting. We stayed on this for a long time talking. They're sliding through the HDR tone mapping again, trying to see if we could figure out why the green was different or why the red was not as rich, all those types of things we were discussing.
Yeah, the color space difference is a big one. I didn't even think about that. This is the CVS one that we were looking at. And then we were also looking at the text like New York, New York. I think it was blurrier on the left, the New York, New York text, but the CVS had that detail in the red. And then on the right side, the Epson 12000 had orange on that castle. There's like a castle topper. Yeah, and it was red on the Valerian. And it was also kind of a little bit orange on the NZ500. So I just wonder if it's those two projectors just don't have the red output that the Valerian does.
Yeah, I think I echo that completely. That it was really strange where the projector seemed to have superior characteristics. It kind of surprised you. He's talking about this New York and this New York, and that was clear on the Epson, but the CVS sign had more detail on the Valerian. Mandalay Bay was a little different, but I don't remember which one is which. And then, of course, the street sign we already talked about was the difference.
It looks small in the video, but we could clearly read that text on the street sign.
Let's see. So here you can kind of see, look at, this is what we're talking about. We're EBL, watch EBL on the left. Hasn't engaged, it's dimming it down, now they're the same. And then when it comes back up, EBL is doing it right. Like, look, it's got a blacker screen than the Epson. So it's trading off. Epson wins, Valerian wins, like in the same little clip. Okay, this scene was from John Wick 4. They're like it's a shootout in a traffic circle. JVC owned this one, and I don't think the other two were comparable in my opinion. What do you guys think?
No, I'm on board with that.
I agree. I didn't like the scene on either other projector, other than the NZ500.
Okay, again, I guess we changed some setting and ran it again. Oh, frame interpolation on and off because some of the guys hated frame interpolation, so we toggled it back and forth.
It's fun to see how vehement some people get about some things.
Yeah, at one point, Tim decided he was going to leave the room because he couldn't stand frame interpolation.
He just folded his arms.
So this one was curious. I didn't really like either of these in comparison to NZ500. The LS12000 kind of made her face look soft to me, like it took away some of her detail and wrinkles, and I felt like her face was a little bit plasticky on the Valerian. So they definitely presented differently. I'm not talking about the color. If you're just joining us, ignore the color. That's not part of the equation here. That's how the camera picks it up. But they had a difference in the way they presented the texture of the skin. And even the crown was different. I remember us talking about the crown being different. The Valerian had more detail in the crown, but actually blew out a little bit, and the Epson didn't have quite as much detail. It's like it was just a little softer. Okay, here's the credit scene with the LS12000 right and the Valerian left. When we get to it,
We were looking at those torches too at the beginning there.
okay, so it's going to pop up right there, and EBL's doing a good job for a moment, and then it reverses. This is kind of a funny thing, because the Epson, it's just a tug of war, man. You know, they're trading back and forth.
Oh, that's where the Epson's going full fade to black.
Full fade to black.
Didn't have that.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll go to the scrolling part. This was, we were checking in frame interpolation between them, which one we like the scrolling better. I think we all kind of agreed that the Valerian was a little bit better on that for the frame interpolation settings. Here's the Interstellar Hans Zimmer concert. I mean, look at the black floor difference. This is where Valerian just smacked the Epson again. Like the native contrast on the Epson is 5,000 to 1, and its dynamic dimming is slow. The EBL is faster. The black level is just like it looks. Like it looked better on the Valerian, no question. Like when you get that little bit of kind of gray shadow on the screen, you just kind of think, "Man, I wish this projector was a little bit better." And you can't help yourself thinking that. Yeah. And the Valerian had less of that as a whole, I think, than the Epson did. And the NZ500 had very, very little of that totally. So here again, the Valerian looks better. It's blacker than the NZ500. Are you guys? Is this compressing so much that we're wasting everyone's time? Can you guys see this okay, even on your side of the stream?
Most of the stuff has been presenting not half bad on the stream.
Okay.
I've had it popped up in another window.
I kind of wish the projector screen was a little bit bigger in the video, because I'm seeing like a foot shake, and that's like the biggest part of the screen.
It's distracting. The white sock.
Yeah, especially when you're fast forwarding. I just see it going up and down.
Oh, well, we were watching this for a little while. This is when you know you're too into this, when you're watching these little things and trying to watch the screen.
The thinking icon animation. It's like, oh, well, check out the black levels there.
Okay, so this is the LS12000 versus the Valerian on the Star Trek motion picture intro. I think in person it just looked more gray on the Epson. I'm not sure this video is showing what we saw in person. I think it was superior on the Valerian, I believe. Although the Epson had more of the white tonality,
yes,
and the Valerian had a little bit of that kind of red outline on the stars or whatnot. But
almost like a red fringe that followed behind it.
Sure, I just, to me, I would give the nod on to the Valerian on this one. What do you guys think? Were you in the same camp, or did you agree? Or
yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like the red on the side, but I agree that it was better. I mean, the really super dark star scenes like that just don't show up well on the Epson.
So I think, personally speaking, this one's presenting a little bit different than I saw it. I actually liked the LS12000 a little bit better on this scene in person, because I felt like the colors weren't, again, the same thing as before. I felt like the colors were muted on the Valerian on this scene, and the Epson had kind of the more rich reds. And I don't think this contrast difference showed up to my eyes as much as it clearly shows up in the video. Like the video shows this as being way blacker, but that's not how I saw it in person.
Yeah, I've actually got a screen grab of that one that we might be able to pop later.
We definitely should. So here's the comment that we talked about that probably won't show up well again, but we can try.
Whoa.
Apparently my camera was in an earthquake for a moment.
You need to pop some phenobarbital there, man.
Huh, what happened? I'm not sure what's going on.
We were looking at the sky on this particular one in the water. Something with the
Let's see if we
splash.
can just get a frame or something in here.
I can't remember why we looked at the. Oh, I think we looked at the water because there's sparkles. This is one of the scenes that was
literally the highlights of the water detail was disappearing on one versus the other. I think is what it was, where the splash was occurring.
It does look like there's quite a bit more like stuff happening here somehow. How could that be?
Because is that clipping thing that we were seeing? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, like it just looks like the splash is thicker over here than over here.
Mm-hmm. That could also be where your camera's at.
Is that in motion? Because there is your slight delay. No, that's paused. That's paused. Never mind.
Well, it could be the latency between one and the other.
That's why I was saying it wouldn't be, because they're paused.
Right, but if it doesn't matter, if one's always trailing the other a little bit, even pausing it, you're going to have a slightly different image on one versus the other.
That can't be.
I think if it's paused, it should be the same frame.
It'll send the same signal. It's just the latency while in motion, one would follow the other. Once they're paused,
okay, I see what you're saying.
They'll get caught up.
I see what you're saying.
Sense. Yeah.
That's how to handle a disagreement, gentlemen. We didn't give it a name.
Aww.
You guys are great.
Heal the world, make it a better place.
Here, I am a little confused unless it's just the distance. Like, why does it look thicker on the right? I don't think I noticed that in person, so it might just be a camera deal.
Yeah.
I mean, the left one is all purple here, so it must be missing out on some of the channels for some reason. Oh, my goodness.
I'm going forward because we can't see what we need to see anyway. What we saw there and what we were intending to point out was that the comet was faded on the Valerion and not on the LS12000. Now, this is the one where the Valerion spanks the LS12000. So
in shadow detail.
Yeah.
Not in highlight detail.
I don't think it was that different, but it starts becoming real different real fast, and you can kind of see it already. Like the blacks on the Valerion were notably darker than the blacks on the LS12000. You can see it right here, right?
Yeah, you can already see it.
I mean, look at the overspray.
I mean, it was worse than this in person. The LS12000 was very gray at this point.
Ignore color differences, and then we're coming out here to the dog barking, and this looks like, ignore the color differences, this looked really like nice. I mean, it looked like you could see it was black. This was gray. So when the aliens start appearing, let me get to the point where they do right here, you can see like the shadows moving and stuff. You could see it over here, but that's because the camera's doing it. In person, it's like just so gray you can't even really tell what's going on. Like there's an alien right there. You can't tell what's going on over here. In person, it was a smackdown. Okay, here's Lucy. I prefer this on the LS12000, personally speaking, and it's the same thing we talked about, where I felt like the Valerion made her hair a little thick, like it was hairsprayed, and you can't tell in this video, it's not high enough quality, but in person, that's what I was noticing from the front row. He sits 9 feet away from 158-inch screen. This was a 137-inch equivalent when the side-by-side, because we had over-zoomed it, but that was really the only key difference. I didn't notice anything looking terrible. It was just a slight subjective preference, and other guys may have a slightly different subjective preference, and that's totally fine. What do you guys think of this one?
So this is one of those that, as I went back afterwards and goofed with settings that we didn't play with during the viewing, super resolution is on and was on the entire time.
Yeah.
And so when I took that off, she definitely got smoother, so to speak. And so if you're more looking for a smoother presentation and maybe less edgy, definitely you can turn off. In the setting that I had, you would turn off the super resolution.
Does that super resolution affect the armor that Jonathan was talking about in the cave scene with the dwarves?
I'd have to go back and look at it.
Okay.
I can do that.
Yeah, it definitely didn't affect the signs in Vegas. That was that's probably a Rec 2020 thing. But yeah, I'm curious about that.
Like her pores, for example, on her face. If you backed up just right before she's kind of looking right before she's looking for the different color strands. That she
Okay.
goes and grabs. Anyway, there's a shot there. Yeah, you just let it kind of play. Maybe it's
Where
back a
from?
little. Maybe it's back a little further.
A little further back. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, like right there where she turns. I toggled the super resolution on and off, and with it on, you could see really strong detail around her pores. And when I toggled it off, it definitely smoothed out and was less. I'm gonna call it defined. So if you want kind of that more crispy image, then you have options versus if you want a smoother image. But this is definitely one detail where that was a factor.
Interesting. Okay. So here's the THX demo. This was a funny one too because it switched back and forth between the two as far as which one had the upper hand during the clip.
I think somebody used the analogy of an arm wrestling match where they were going back and forth.
Did you change seats on this?
I did. I'm now on the left-hand side, but still the Valerion Max on the left and the Epson on the right. So I'm in a different spot with the camera, but the projectors are in the same spot. So at the beginning of this one, the Epson seemed like it was a little stronger in person. And then when it got brighter, the Valerion seemed like it was better in person. Which I don't even understand it, John. Like, I thought EBL didn't really engage if there was a high ADL on the screen. By the time you're here, there's a high ADL, but it was definitely engaging. Or maybe the interesting contrast is just that much better or something because it was clearly more black on the Valerion in person.
Yeah, it's the only thing I can think. And as far as the interesting, because the EBL shouldn't be on at that point with that much brightness, especially like through right there.
Mm-hmm.
But
this on the Epson was actually kind of just like gray blacks. There was not a true black. And on the Valerion, at this point in the scene, it looked blacker. I mean, you can't tell in this video. You're just going to have to listen to what we're saying. It's like half these things are that way. This was the only scene in the entire night that I noticed a little bit of laser speckle, I think, on Sheldon's screen from the front row. And it was when you had these real close-ups on her face. Like that same exact color on her face that was that large. I saw a tiny bit of speckle. It wasn't even bothersome. Like I wouldn't even classify as bothersome. I was trying to look for it. This is the only thing I saw it on. Because you guys were in the back row the whole night. Could you even see that laser speckle back there?
Yes.
It was really tough. You had to look for it.
Yeah, it was super subtle. Like I can see laser speckle with my screen material fairly easily on certain content, so I know what I'm looking for, and that was the only clip that I was able to spot it the whole night.
Yeah, same. And I don't even think it was that bad. Like I remember my first introduction on a laser spectacle was the LG 810.
Yeah.
And red on it looked like a little like carnival or something. All the little pixels were dancing. It wasn't like that. It was real subtle. And there was red on this clip. I mean, you just didn't see it in the other colors. Maybe it was not that it wasn't a large enough space on the screen or something. It was really truly only for me, only her face that I saw it in. I didn't see it in the sky. I didn't see it in the pavement, just her face. This was Sicario. Am I saying it right? Sicario, something like that?
Yeah, Sicario.
Yeah, the second one was correct.
This is interesting to some degree. I liked this scene better on the LS12000 than the Pro 2 last month. And I liked it better on the Max than I liked it on the LS12000 this month. So I can't really explain that, except for that's just clearly
Tune in
what
next
it was.
month.
I feel like
I think it's the native contrast or the EBL performance. Like, look right here, you can tell how much you're losing with the Epson LS12000. It's blacker on the Valerion Max.
This one changed a lot too throughout the scene. It was kind of like one of those flip-floppy ones.
It was.
Whereas the Pro 2, it doesn't have the native contrast that the Max has, at least in the mode we were watching in, right? Because it's, what are you saying? It's like 1801 versus 4001 Pro 2 to Max.
Yeah.
John.
Yep.
And so like on the Pro, I think it just pretty universally looked worse than the Epson because the native contrast is like half what the Epson is. But the fixed iris at Cinema 2 and the EBL technology just made it look overall mostly better, in my opinion, on the Max. And the LS9000 on this clip was dog poop. It was terrible. It was so bad. There was no like dynamic demand at all. Top Gun Maverick. We were watching it through snowfields very specifically because I wanted to see if I could see any RBE in here, and I'm happy to report I could not. This was a terrible mess on the Pro 2 to my eyes, and not at all on the Max. Like I couldn't see any RBE. In the Pro 2, when I'm watching these planes, these silver planes fly through the white snow, it's like they're like rainbow little circles, like UFOs or something. You can't even really tell they're planes. It's just like UFOs of red, green, and blue flying all over the snow. It's really terrible. But zero with the Max and rainbow reduction mode. Now, see, the camera's picking up some of that DLP flashing. Like, see the blue, see the yellow. There should be some red in here too. That's the kind of stuff that if you're sensitive to rainbow effect, you see that nonsense, and it's really hard to like even like properly demo a projector like that because you're just like your color flashing is going crazy. Luckily, my eyes are not fast enough to pick up that stuff that the camera's picking up in the Max, but certainly on the Pro, I'm seeing that stuff. Okay, enough of that. That's why that clip was included. It looked otherwise good on all the projectors, I thought. I don't even think it looked bad on the NZ500 on this one. John, did you?
No, I thought the motion was good on it.
Yeah, I would have expected the motion to be kind of poor on the NZ500 based on my NZ7 ownership, but I think the NZ500 has a little bit better motion than the previous JVCs. This scene right here, I think I don't remember actually comparing this, and we did, I'm sure. Do you guys remember seeing this with the Valerion and the JVC
500
with the blue,
No, I don't.
the blue background? In my experience in my room, I really like the NZ500 on this scene more than my Epsons. I have the Epson LS12000. I have the Epson QL3000 right now. The blue looks nice, but there's not the black floor that scene needs to really, that's not the native contrast to really make that scene pop. And the NZ500 like solo on that scene looks fan-frickin-tastic. And I think the Valerion looked pretty good on it too. I just don't remember the comparison to tell you exactly how close they were. Still in the scene, fast forwarding.
Yeah, this is where we were turning on and off anti-RBE on purpose.
Yeah.
I closed my eyes when you turned it off.
Yeah, it was all back. The rainbow effect was all back.
Yeah, it was so painful. I was like, no, I don't want to see this.
I mean, you can even see it in this menu here as you're scrolling with the rainbow thing off. Look at the menus flashing.
And as I recall, people were saying that it's supposed to be, the capability to turn it on and off is based more on the fact that it produces a high-pitched whine. But
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I'm worried about my hearing. Or maybe, I don't know. It's more
It could be at a frequency. We're all middle-aged men at this point, man. If it's like 16, 17,000 hertz, would we even hear it? Kevin might.
I should be able to, yeah.
I don't hear that high anymore.
The youngin'.
But I didn't notice it with this, and I noticed it with my projector at home. Like I have a DLP that's a six wheel, or 6 color wheel, and that one I definitely noticed like that. But this one I couldn't hear it, and I wonder if part of it's the room because the room eats up all the sound, and then also because it wasn't. I don't know. It could have been like the number of bodies in the room too, but I just think in general this room is a lot quieter.
It is a well-treated room, and I believe it errors on the side of a slightly more dead sound, which I actually am a fan of. Some people will feel differently, but I like it a little bit on the slightly deader than recommended side, but everybody's different.
Which projector are we even looking at here? I don't even know which
I
one.
think this was the 500 where we were looking at 24 frames per second versus 60.
This is when it
Okay.
looked really disgusting. If we were messing with something.
Yeah, because when we watched it earlier, we were doing the 60 off the NVIDIA card.
Oh my god.
I think
this
you're finally finding your clips that showed up out of order when you brought them in that you were thinking you were going to be watching earlier in the broadcast.
I thought we did this at the end.
Yeah, it was at the end.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
Maybe I just
Did I
didn't
leave
get
already?
footage. This
No,
is
you were
just-
here.
I must have been grousing.
Because you noted it too. You said, "Oh, it looks disgusting." Like we were going. It was like all messy when we're doing that panning scene. I was feeling motion sick at that point. And then we realized this clip was 60 frames a second.
So this
So
is
the
all
shutter
just NZ500 again.
Mm-hmm. Because we were checking for motion judder and other things because we saw it here, but we think either it was in the playback or in the clip itself because we saw it on every single projector.
All right. Well, now that I put like 60 miles on my scroll wheel, that thing's been, I've been spinning it with two hands at certain points.
Do you mind if I pop up some quick photos or no?
Yeah. That's fine.
And then
I guess I just don't even have raw footage of the LS12000 solo and the Valerion solo, at least not very much. Looks like I had some menu stuff, but not much in the way of actual content. That wasn't intentional.
Yeah, well, I mean, you still, what did you shoot? Like 5.5
hours.
Footage? Good grief.
Changed batteries once.
That's a testament to that thing.
Yeah. They don't overheat anymore. At least the DJI ones don't. Okay. I'll stop sharing and let you share.
See if I can find which window is open over here. There we go. Let me know if you see what I see.
Here it comes. Yep.
All right. So these are just frame grabs out of video, right? But and a couple of these really hit home just how much the the color presents differently to a sensor, right? And the sensor, I believe on these, I just had the camera itself locked to 6500 Kelvin for white balance. And then the chips fall where they may based off whatever, it captures off of images like these. But everything from the ISO to the shutter speed, the shutter angle even can cause different artifacts to show up. So as always, again, most of the stuff that we're looking for here will be, just, like say highlight detail and how much brighter one's presenting than the other. That part would be fairly accurate. And in scenes like these, this one right here, I thought they both actually threw a fairly pleasing picture in person. Which is why we always go back to, the scenes that you don't see as often. It's like, oh, here's a torture test and here's a torture test. That's something that people need to keep in mind if they're having FOMO on one projector versus another. It's like when you could watch an awful lot of content sometimes and accidentally never even run into something that says, oh, well, your projector doesn't do this as badly as another one does. Because sometimes that sort of gets lost in a lot of this. This is the one we talked about ad nauseum quite a bit, but this is the one I actually cropped in on earlier where we're looking at those different things that we talked about just at some length. But I was just throwing this up here, just sort of like the overall, oh, this is what it looks like, when you can see the whole thing, at probably a little bit better than normal quality. The Remnant, what is it? The Revenant? Whatever.
Revenant.
Thank you, Reverend. This is the one you were talking about earlier where you thought the 12,000 on the right looked a little bit more contrasty. And I actually was surprised that I was a little bit disagreeing. I actually liked the fact that it was pulling a little bit more environment detail in the background on the other side. I was running off the idea that maybe you could tweak the color a little bit if you wanted to push more one way versus the other. But as far as like the sharpness and stuff like that, they both present remarkably similar to each other. They both look pretty good, I thought. And then this is another one from the same scene, just a little bit more panning and whatnot. Same idea going on there. Let's see here. Then this one I think we talked about quite a bit already. I'll pop down to this one just to show this scene a little bit better of what we were trying to see earlier. It's actually pretty darn close on the splash itself.
Okay.
On the two, I would say I would probably give it to the Epson It has just a little bit more detail where it is clipping here. You can
Yeah,
tell.
you can see it. Yeah.
The Comet is the worst of the two, I think, which is why I picked that to crop earlier. But yes, also in the Splash, you're seeing that. This one over here, let's see here. I actually thought they both looked pretty good. Where when it came to how much contrast it was pulling out, you could probably flip a coin on which one you would like somebody might prefer on one versus the other. You know, it's way more about the color presenting that somebody might say, oh well, of course the one on the left looks better. With yeah, but in person, or actually look at the white of his eyes, right? But it's funny, you aren't even aware of these things until you throw up a side by side in a lot of case anyways. And again, it presents differently to a camera sensor as well. And then I'll finally end on this last one where every once in a while there were things where like the Valerion was doing a pretty good job of holding on to its highlight detail with flames in this particular scene. But I actually what you were talking about earlier is like, well, you know, maybe I want that extra punchy feel, right? That you might actually prefer the image on the left anyway, even though it's actually technically clipping more. So again, we're running into this sort of like almost like philosophical idea you have to decide for yourself. Is like, do you want to have a little bit more punch because there's only so much your projector can do, or do you want it to have a little bit more muted picture and reclaim that highlight detail? So
which two were in that last shot?
What's that?
Ryan? Which two were shown in that last shot?
That was, let's see here, that last one, I believe that was a throwback. I want to say that one was the not the 12,000. So I think I apologize. I probably threw up the JVC on that one versus the Valerion. So, but all the other ones I believe were the 12,000 versus the Max. So sorry about that.
All right, we got a couple comments that I'm going to bring up here as far as pinned comments. They're from earlier in the stream. Why can't I click that?
It's a skill issue.
There it goes. Kept changing whenever I move my mouse. All right, so he's probably no longer here. This was at the very beginning of the podcast. This is Austin, our buddy. He lives down in I think it's Texas right now. Picked up the Zimi Horizon 20 Max a few months ago. I asked back because of the massive 5400 lumen max rating to use as an outdoor projector. I actually really like it, even if it can't reach the spec. I haven't seen the Zimi Horizon 20 Max. You guys, by chance?
Nope.
Yeah. No, spec wise, it's sort of like, it's a little bit the game you're playing with yours, Jonathan, where it's like, you know, the contrast isn't quite as good, but the extra brightness can be pretty addicting. I think that 5400 lumen, if I'm not mistaken, in most real world situations, I think it's a little bit under 5,000 instead. But even then, I mean, you're looking at something that could potentially be almost double brightness for some people. And they might find that, hey, wow, you know, it's like smontrast. I like me some brights, especially depending on the room environment you've got.
Sure.
I can't remember his, but.
Sure. And I think there's some interesting things to be had there. I like native contrast. I use an OLED as my display here. Like, I miss it when it's gone. But it's not. I think there's scenes and stuff where the trade-off is worthwhile. We've talked about this. I put it in the text conversation with you the other day, Ryan. It's kind of an interesting observation to me. The other day, 2 or 3 days ago, I heard Harry Potter movie 8 playing downstairs.
Yeah.
And I walked downstairs after a half hour, maybe an hour that it was playing. I came down to see how they were doing and if they were enjoying it or whatever. And the Epson QL3000 was on. And I was surprised by that because my kids know how to turn on both projectors. And my 14-year-old was the one driving. And I said, don't you want to use the JVC for this one? This is like one of the darkest movies there could be. Like, the JVC has the better native contrast. Wouldn't you rather have that blacks be black? And my daughter literally said to me, no, I'd rather be able to see what's going on, which is interesting to me because I would have picked the JVC 100% for that movie. But the QL3000's tone mapping elevates details. It's gray. It's a 3001 contrast, so it's not the deep native black that JVC has. But it elevates details out of that deep black with the HDR tone mapping, and she was just saying like, hey, I like to be able to see what's going on more than I care about deep blacks. So even right there in our own family, she hears my preferences all the time. She has her own preferences. She had total control of which projector she fired up. She chose the brighter one. So the Ximi Horizon 20 Max, I mean, all that comes into play as you think about evaluate what projector you want to use. The next one was, what do we think of the Hisense XR10 6000 lumen DLP from MW? I don't know anything about that one either, really. Do you guys?
Do not. I think that's a new one coming out, but I don't know anything on it.
Is that all in the same family as like the Dangbai Thor and the Ximi Titan? Are they all kind of like sharing tech for those things? Or are they different? Do we know?
Well,
I don't
they
know.
all have the same base chip.
The 0.78 DLP chip?
Well,
I mean, these things come out and they're like from 3 different companies. Dangbai, Ximi, and Hisense. They all have like the same similar spec. They're all coming out at the same time type thing. I just kind of wonder if behind the scenes there's some technology sharing to some degree coming out. Maybe not. I just don't know.
Yeah, they could be stealing it from each other too.
They're not even stealing from each other. It's just all coming out of the same factory.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. There's probably someone be offended by us asking that question, but it happens in other industries for sure. So I don't know if it happens here or doesn't. Sorry, MW, we can't really help you there. AVSForum a lot of times has got threads that are way too long for lack of information, but can be read, of course. And that's really all I pinned. Did you guys see anything else? I mean, I read through the comments. Was there anything else you want to talk on that in that regard?
I think that's about it. Yeah, honestly, I'm almost positive that XR10 isn't in anybody's hands yet. So
I've been reading a little bit on that Ximi Titan, and people are, at least 2 or 3 people have them now, and they're enjoying them. There's a thread that's active on there. People are asking all kinds of questions and so forth. They're like 5,000, 6,000 lumen type territory. DLP. I don't think it has like anything equivalent of EBL, but again, the additional lumens people like in some cases.
You know, it's funny. We through this whole discussion of all these projectors, we didn't even mention that the one thing that the Max, you know, while it's not a ton, it actually has a little bit of placement flexibility, which that Pro 2 did not have.
Right.
And
the vertical lens shift.
John, have you like poked your nose at all into like the aftermarket anamorphic lens option that they have for that projector, or no?
No, so I heard you comment that earlier. No, I have not, because I have a 16:9 screen. That said, there is another option for someone who's needing a 2.0 lens. Valerion is selling, it's supposed to come out in February, a lens that will attach to the front of the Max and give it, so right now the motorized lens is 0.9 to 1.5. And when you add this lens that replaces the clear lens over the very front of it, makes it 1.5 to 2.0. So gives you a little more throw distance. But no, I have not looked at the anamorphic option that is being developed.
Classy Tech Calibration says, hey, I'm writing my Horizon 20 Max review right now. At D65 calibration, it's almost 4,000 lumens.
I mean, that's pretty respectable, honestly.
Yeah. What kind of black floor are you getting out of that? What's your contrast rating, Classy Tech, or do you want us just to wait for the review to come out?
Yeah, you got to leave some for meat for the bone.
So Macro Proxy says, I clicked the wrong one because it cycled on me. No interest in ever testing screen materials and implications of that. Ambient light redejection and ST130G4. Man, the SD130 screens are nice. The Stewart 130 screens. I saw one of those at M-Wave 2024 on the NZ900, and I told you guys earlier the NZ500 is probably my second favorite image. NZ900 on a Stewart 130 screen is my favorite image I've ever seen at M-Wave. Yeah. That was beautiful. They had 8K source material created specifically for them by Jacob and Katie Schwartz from the YouTube channel, and it was custom made for JVC. Playing on that screen with that projector in a light controlled room was like jaw-droppingly good. And so yeah, screen material does matter. Unfortunately, ST130 is not going to give you perforations or, you know, acoustic transparent so you can have your speakers behind the screen, which we all appreciate. So it's probably ruled out, but that's a good material. I don't have much experience with ambient light rejecting, other than just being at trade shows and seeing it, and I don't see the utility in it personally, because when you watch those things at trade shows, even though they're better than they would be if you didn't have ambient light rejection, it still looks like crud, and I'd rather have a TV at that point if you're going to be in a bright room. That's my vantage on it. You guys have a different opinion, or what do you think?
No, I mean, can't cheat physics.
I have a ALR in my room for like a UST projector. It's an ultra short throw, but the difference with that is it's the ambient light rejection is
From
taking
above.
the top. Yeah, it's from above only, and that one's like a physical thing. Like there's it's like got little triangles in it, and the screen's like really wonky. You try to look at it, you can't really like see the colors correctly. But the other thing is because the screen is gray, you get a darker floor on that. And I watch it in the dark, but I also like if we're watching content in the daytime, it's usually bright, colorful cartoons and stuff. It's not movies. Like you can't. I only because my projector is not very good. I can't tell you what what it would look like with a good projector. But as far as I've seen, like all the USTs are kind of like that. You just can't really watch dark scenes in them in general.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's even true. Like I've seen a couple guys in the Kansas City areas have some of the Epsons with the ALR screens that match that come with them. I personally don't think that's the choice I would choose, even if you have them in a dedicated room, because the same thing you just said, like the contrast isn't as good on those projectors that are using those screens, and I don't understand why you'd choose that.
Well,
Yeah.
you got, like,
Screen, get a TV, and
In
if
a
you have
best
dark room, you
case
don't get that.
scenario, screens are like that aren't actually adding contrast. It's more like a contrast preservation scheme for rooms with the ambient light. And then you're matching that up with a projector that typically doesn't have that great a contrast in the first place. It's sort of like you're preserving the best you can, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Look at Macro Proxy saying that the G4 is ultra perf compatible.
Yeah, I was trying to sneak that in. Like Andy, I believe, has that on his list already of tested materials. It's been around for, yeah.
I'm remembering wrong then. I thought the highest gain perf material was 115 instead of 130. That's nice. I mean, I haven't seen it, I guess, but that's nice if they have it and it's real. So Classy Tech says regarding to the Horizon 20 Max review, it's complicated with dynamic black settings. Like most of these types of projectors, overall image is really strong for $2,700 though. You're getting a lot of lumens. If you're getting 4,000 lumens for $2,700, that's a lot of brightness.
Yeah, you can't complain too much about much else. You think about where we were even 5 years ago. That's kind of unheard of.
Yeah, I mean the market's really changing in that regard. I'm hoping JVC will join in and get us little brighter projectors too. So Macro Proxy says, I will say the Max will have some. Is that chromatic
aberrations for sure, with no way to correct it? He's referring to that lens add-on, I think. That Panamorph Alpha with the Max. So the chromatic issues. Yeah.
So Macro Proxy says, I'm blown away by the combo here. QL7000. So that's a 10,000 lumen projector. And a lot of times the review sites are saying it's more like 11 or 12. Panamorphic, dark, ambient light rejection screen. Even in a dark room, it really helps. But I don't have nor want a Velvet Cave. That's interesting, man. Where do you live? Are you anywhere around the Midwest? Do you live near Kansas City? I'm inviting myself over if you are.
Dog wants to chew on this bone.
I'd like to see it. I think it's an interesting combination, and I know some people have been trying it in the QL thread, because you have a lot of times, especially if it's not a giant screen, some extra lumens to spare with something like the QL7000. But my question is, if you're knocking it down with a dark screen, are you at that point even better off than just buying like an NZ900 or something? Because you're at the same price park, and I don't know the answer to that. I just haven't seen it to compare.
It'd still be a fair bit brighter though. Because it sounds like he's wanting to preserve the fact that his environment is not, in fact, a velvet cave, right?
Sure.
So.
Oh, look at that! It lives in Houston.
My sister lives in Houston. Hey, sister! I suddenly want to come see you. Why? No reason.
Nice. Well, is that on AVSForum, Macro Proxy? Is that something we can catch and read up on as we have a thread on it? Hey, 400 nits at 150-inch scope. That's nice, man. I'm only getting 375 on mine, and I love it. So if you're getting that, great.
Only
no wonder you like it.
He'll be ready for the next cinema standard.
Yeah, that's cool. I'd like to learn more about that. Well, I mean, what comes to mind is one of the guys on the QL thread. He got a 280-inch screen, and he got like a dark material, and he got the QL 7000, and he was saying like, "This is too dark." Like, well, yeah, you got a giant screen. It's literally over 20 feet across, 20 feet wide, and you have a black material, and you're just not going to have the nits out of that. Even if you have a super bright projector, you can't you just can't do that.
Yeah.
So he is disappointed, which is kind of a shame because nobody wants to be disappointed when they spend all the money and spend all the time trying to build something like that.
It can't be a cheap screen either.
280 inch. No.
Yeah, that's almost
There's a lot that actually cancels out a lot of materials because not a lot of them can't do the height on the roll.
Mm-hmm. Classy Tech says my living room setup is now a 130-inch ALR floor rising with Hisense L9Q UST. Plenty bright. I have two tall lamps, floor lamps, and ceiling lights on, so it still looks great. I mean, there you go. Different strokes for different folks. Looks like a couple guys in here like the ALR screens. Good. I'm not going to fault you any. And maybe I haven't seen like a high class one yet. Maybe I need to be more exposed to these types of things.
This is also noting a UST projector.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those ALR screens are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Although even in my room, I can notice the light bleed if any light is on in the room. Even with the thing, if it like ceiling lights, it's less noticeable, but it's still there. Like even like opening the bathroom door or opening something else where light's bleeding in from some window or something, it's enough to show up on the screen from my perspective that I've seen it. Maybe their projector is also a lot brighter.
And Kevin too, with your ALR screens, do you guys see extra like speckle or reflection type attributes to the quality of the image?
No, I saw it when it was on the wall, but not on the screen.
That's good. That's one of the concerns that I would have with that. But
yeah, because the UST projectors, the problem is there's like a hot spot on it in the middle, but you don't see that when you project it onto a screen. I don't know why that is, but I don't notice that at all. Although when I was on a wall, it was more obvious, especially the wider the wall, you'll see that hot spot for sure.
All right. Looks like we got to the end of the comments. I think John might have stepped away. Oh, there you go. Macro Proxy has confirmed he has a long throw ALR Seymour version. Only complaint is the perforation isn't as good as Stewart's. Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you still got a stellar image. You got 400 nits with some little bit of lighting in the room even. All right, fellas. Anything else before we close out? Thanks for your time. This went on quite a while.
Yeah, it did a little bit, but hey,
somebody.
Hopefully somebody will find this mildly bemusing.
Thanks for joining us, John, and for bringing over the Valerion Max for us to play with.
Yeah, that was that was really cool to see that.
Yeah.
And the Pro the month before. And also Sheldon's not on here, but thanks to Sheldon for hosting us, buying us pizza, and giving us a good evening.
And his room sounding incredible.
It is. It was wonderful.
Great fun, except for now, my son is currently working on a Hover Easy setup for his couch.
There you go.
Planning on having it done this weekend. So
very good.
Thank you kindly, chat.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.